Chapter 13:27. After Li Xiaoyun finished speaking, he stood up and reached out to pull Jing Yunzhao up as well. After patting her clothes, he looked around and said, "I came here today mainly to inform you guys, not to listen to your opinions. Whether it's the engagement or marriage in the future, Grandpa will handle it for me. I won't trouble you guys. If you guys are willing, feel free to attend when the time comes. If not, it's fine if you don't show up." A trace of surprise flashed across Jing Yunzhao's face. She never thought that Li Xiaoyun would be so domineering towards his own parents. However, thinking about it carefully, he wasn't like this towards old man Li. So, it wasn't that he wasn't filial, but that he could differentiate clearly. Since Li Xiaoyun didn't want to stay any longer, Jing Yunzhao naturally wouldn't blindly think of having these elders acknowledge her identity. Thus, after giving them a polite smile, she also followed Li Xiaoyun's footsteps. Behind them, the faces of Li Peixian, Li Xiaoyun, and Li Xiaoyun's second aunt were twitching furiously. On the other hand, Li Ying calmly took a sip of tea. Her expression remained indifferent. "First sister, second sister, what do you think we should do? If Xiaoyun really marries that woman, what should we do?" asked Wang Rishan with a worried look on her face. "Sister-in-law, I think you are too weak. You are Xiaoyun's mother. If you harden your heart, that woman won't even be able to marry into the family. Even if Xiaoyun is angry, what can he do to you? You gave birth to him, so it is only natural for him to listen to you," said Li Rui. Wang Rishan sighed when she heard that. Finally, Li Ying spoke. "I think this girl is quite good. Big sister. Are you sure? What's so good about such a domineering girl?" Li Rui hurriedly denied. "Big sister, are you saying that we should agree? But won't that be akin to admitting defeat?" asked Wang Rishan carefully. She was also frightened by these two sisters-in-law. Li Ying was a strong woman who had been strong all her life and did a better job than her husband. Although Li Rui used to be delicate and not very capable, she was now rich and lived a luxurious and carefree life. Except for the lack of a husband, she had no regrets in other aspects. "Sister-in-law, I came here today mainly to see what the girl who cured Chiyugua is like. I'm not here to condemn this child with you. In my opinion, our father's taste must be right. It is our Li family's blessing to marry such a girl." Li Ying changed her posture and sat up straight. The reason why she didn't express her love for Jing Yunzhao was mainly because she didn't know Jing Yunzhao's specific situation and Li Xiaoyun's true attitude. Of course, there was also the matter of children. She wasn't a young person after all, so she couldn't understand the idea of equality. Although it was a pity that the Jing clan didn't have any inheritance, to her, the Li clan was more important. However, if Jing Yunzhao could have a few more children in the future, this matter wouldn't be too big of a problem. The moment Li Ying said that, Wang Rishan's expression became hesitant and conflicted. "Sis, I don't agree with your words. You have to marry a virtuous wife. The most important thing for a woman is to support her husband and teach her children. Our Xiaoyun isn't bad either. She just likes to keep a low profile. This Jing Yunzhao, on the other hand, is a head above hers. If this were to spread out in the future, people would only say that we're lucky, but it's obviously Jing Yunzhao who climbed up a higher branch." Li Rui immediately refuted. "Why should a woman take good care of her husband and children? Why can't a man take a step back? Rui, you're also a woman. When your husband was alive, you didn't take good care of him and children either," said Li Ying directly. Chapter 13:28. Li Rui was no longer young, and her son was already an adult with his own thoughts. On the other hand, she was still an arrogant young lady. She spent her days shopping, playing, making friends, and living a fulfilling life. In the eyes of others, such a life might be considered unfaithful, but for Li Rui, all she wanted was to be happy. That was why Li Ying was using those words to educate her. "Big sister, are you rubbing salt on my wound?" Li Rui's face turned cold at the mention of her late husband. "I'm only telling you that this is Xiaoyun's marriage. You know very well what kind of person he is. You shouldn't interfere too much. Originally, I didn't approve of this marriage, but since Xiaoyun likes it, as his aunt, I will naturally stand on his side," said Li Ying. Her big brother and sister-in-law were both people who didn't have their own opinions. Most of the time, they weren't bad people either. But Li Rui was someone who loved to see the world burn. Very few people could catch Li Rui's eye, and the moment she disliked them, she would say something bad about them. Her big brother and sister-in-law had heard a lot of things like that, so they would definitely have a problem with it. If it was any other time, with eldest brother and sister-in-law's personalities, even if they didn't like Jing Yunjiao, they still wouldn't leave Xiaoyan outside and not open the door. Wasn't this all because of Li Rui's suggestion? Li Rui's face turned unsightly when she heard her big sister's words. She snorted coldly, glanced at them, and stood up.
Fine.
Since big sister doesn't want me to interfere, I won't interfere. But big brother, sister-in-law, you need to think this through. This Jing Yunjiao is not a kind person. Her grandfather is called Li Wenba, and he died after being pushed off the altar by her. How filial can someone as vicious as her be? Furthermore, all of you had expressed your dissatisfaction with her so directly. How can someone like her not bear a grudge? I'm sure she will definitely whisper something to Xiaoyan when she returns. At that time, as parents, you won't even be able to compare to a stranger. After saying that, Li Rui left with her son and the cat. Li Peixian and Wang Rishan, who were in the room, frowned when they heard this. They did feel a little uncomfortable. Rich families had no familial ties, and they didn't have a good relationship with their sons. If their sons were to marry a docile and amiable woman, they might still have a say in the future. But if their sons married Jing Yunjiao, they might not even be able to see their sons again. At that thought, Wang Rishan's eyes turned red. It's all my fault for not having a good family background. Otherwise, how could I let a little girl suppress me?
Dad is really something.
How could he allow someone like Jing Yunjiao to enter our family? Are you trying to embarrass me on purpose? Rishan. Li Peixian scolded. You think too much. Our father loves his grandson, and his grandson likes him. How could he deliberately target you? Although Li Peixian didn't have much ability, he still respected his father very much. Even if he blamed his wife in his heart, he couldn't let his wife talk nonsense on the surface. Moreover, his sister and the servants were still in the house. It wouldn't be good if word got out. I don't care. I can't tolerate this daughter-in-law. Wang Rishan cried again. Li Peixian hurriedly comforted her. When Liang saw that, she shook her head inwardly. Being born into a small family didn't necessarily mean one was petty. But her sister-in-law was the kind of person who clearly didn't have that kind of temperament, but still insisted on comparing herself to others. Not only was she sentimental, she was also petty. Fortunately, she wasn't very smart. Otherwise, the family wouldn't have a peaceful day. Chapter 13:29. Liang didn't stay for long. She knew that the couple wouldn't listen to anything she said, so she didn't bother to say anything. After leaving with her son, she thought for a while and picked out a gift. She asked someone to send it to Old Master Li to make up for the lack of a gift. Before Jing Yunjiao went to meet Li Xiaoyan's parents, Old Master Li had already given her a heads up. Therefore, she was prepared for all kinds of situations, so she wasn't agitated. When she went back and received the gift from Liang, she was a little surprised. When they met before, it was Li Ying's second aunt who spoke. Her eldest aunt didn't speak at all. She thought that they all had the same idea. She didn't expect Liang to express a different attitude afterward. What kind of person is your eldest aunt? Why didn't she speak up for you and me before? Jing Yunjiao looked at the expensive gift and was a little puzzled. Li Xiaoyan glanced at the gift and then looked at Old Master Li. Then he smiled and said, "What kind of person do you think my eldest aunt is? Old-fashioned, serious, and traditional." Jing Yunjiao frowned and thought for a while before saying these 3 words. When the grandfather and grandson heard this, they both smiled. "Good boy, my eldest daughter is quite like your eldest uncle. Both of them are smart. They look old-fashioned and serious, but in fact, they are cunning and good at scheming." Old Master Li's beard curled up and he said, "This old-fashioned and serious look is just a disguise. She values reputation and achievements very much. In addition, because of work, she is very scheming and good at scheming. She sent you these gifts to win you over, and also to test you. It's good that you accept them calmly. The next time you meet her, just be indifferent. Don't think that she is sincere to you. She just wants to take this opportunity to know how shrewd you are and figure out your character. Only then can she get benefits from you in the future. Lee Junwei was merciless in his evaluation of his daughter. She had to admit that because they were old Master Lee's children, she thought highly of them. At this time, when she heard old Master Lee's explanation, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. You seem to look down on them? Jing Yunzhao said softly. Lass, you don't know. Back then, the war was chaotic and it wasn't easy to marry a wife. I didn't have high expectations, so the lady I married was very ordinary. Not to mention culture, she didn't even have much education. I trained and fought outside all day long and relied on her to educate my children. I had Elder Chi's guidance, so I was able to achieve what I have today. They were different. They didn't see much of the world in the past. Other than the identity I gave them, they didn't have anything. However, this kind of thing was unavoidable. At that time, it was not like now, where they could reduce their workload for their children. Back then, time was blood. The more they missed, the more they would lose. Therefore, there was no time for education. Actually, that kid Pei-Xian was not bad when he was young. He was quite brave and always wanted to follow me to kill enemies. However, later on, a kid in the courtyard accidentally jumped when he was playing with a gun.
He saw that scene.
Later on, my wife repeatedly warned him about how scary the gun was, causing him to become more and more timid. Saying that he was timid is overestimating him. At that time, the emphasis was on having children. My wife felt that the son was everything, so she treated him like a precious treasure. After a long time, his ears became soft and he listened to women too much. He wasn't bad at heart, but he was just brainless. Old Master Lee was already a little disdainful towards the end. Chapter 1330. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but sigh. No wonder Grandpa Li kept Li Xiaoyan under his wing. Otherwise, this man of hers would have turned into a timid and childish playboy. Grandpa Li, it's fortunate that you raised Xiaoyan well, Jing Yunzhao praised. At the mention of Li Xiaoyan, the old man couldn't help but laugh for a while. That was true. His son couldn't be changed, but his grandson was definitely the best in the world. His education in the past was quite effective. Li Xiaoyan glared at her from the side, as if he was complaining. He was the one who was praised, but the old man was the one who was being praised. This made him feel very uncomfortable. He even started to wonder if his wife had taken a fancy to him or the old man. Back then, when he first saw Old Master, he was the only one who was so excited. When Jing Yunzhao saw Li Xiaoyan's resentful gaze, he secretly patted his back, as if he was patting the fur of a puppy. However, Li Xiaoyan enjoyed it very much, and his bad temper dissipated very quickly. With this grandfather-granddaughter pair's advice, Jing Yunzhao accepted the gift and let the person return her thanks. She didn't show too much excitement. However, not 2 days later, this eldest auntie, Liang, asked her out for a meeting. Jing Yunzhao calmly went to meet her, but she activated her shield the entire time, trying to defend herself as much as possible. In the end, Li Ying's fawning only turned into simple greetings and they quickly dispersed. Jing Yunzhao finally understood why Li Ying had the same attitude as everyone else in the beginning. After all, even though there were a lot of rumors about her, Li Ying still didn't know her well enough. That's why she wanted to test her character through the tit-for-tat between her and other people before deciding what to do next. Everyone was full of traps. One had to be careful of being tricked at any time. After the new year, Jing Yunzhao had a lot of dinners. She had a few companies and a lot of connections. In the past, she could hide in the back and not show her face, but now she had to occasionally take care of others' faces. Fortunately, Pak Yuan and the others were becoming more and more capable in the business field. They could easily deal with people and blocked many invitations for her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have enough time to spend 24 hours a day. When the business contacts were more or less settled, Jing Yunzhao would get together with Pak Yuan and some other friends every year. This year, She even invited them to the old Jing residence for a reunion dinner. The Jing family's old residence was exactly the same as the Su family's. After Li Wenbo fell from power, this house was also taken over by her and officially became her private residence. After all, she was the heir of the Jing family, and it wasn't appropriate for her to always live in the Su residence. After all, even if she didn't have any objections, the Jings would be worried. She was young and a girl. In the eyes of outsiders, it was easy for others to control and influence her. Although the Su and Jing families were on the same side, there were still times when they had to draw a clear line. There couldn't be any confusion in their businesses. The Jings didn't want the Su family to interfere too deeply in her businesses, in case someone tried to seize power again. In fact, Jing Yunzhao wasn't worried. She wanted to insist, but her grandfather saw things more clearly than she did. Before the Jings could force her to be independent, her grandfather chased her out of the house. Fortunately, although they were two families, their relationship was no different from before. Jing Yunzhao didn't care about those small details. In the Jing residence, the environment wasn't bleak. There were many servants who were all personally selected by Jing Yunzhao. In order to welcome the guests, the decorations were especially luxurious and warm. There were more than they could handle as they waited for the guests to arrive. Chapter 1331. The fastest to arrive was celestial immortal Hua, who was as swift as the wind, followed by the respectful and courteous Bai Yuan and Xiang Jin, the newlywed couple, as well as the great philanthropist Qin Shui. Pak Yuan and Xiang Jin hadn't been married for long, and they hadn't held a banquet. They had simply collected their marriage certificate and treated their close friends to a meal, but that didn't stop them from being lovey-dovey. The slowest to arrive were Xiao Haiqing and Tang Zihua. Xiao Haiqing was now an A-list actress, and she was so busy that Jing Yunzhao didn't even have time to see her. It wasn't easy for her to be able to come for a meal. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, and she looked slightly charming. Her eyes were captivating, but they weren't too ostentatious, and she looked much more mature. The moment Jing Yunzhao saw her, his heart felt like it had melted, and he chatted with her eagerly. They were true friends. Even if they hadn't seen each other for a few years, they wouldn't feel distant at all, let alone a few months. The people who came today were all her friends. Most of them were relatively young, so they didn't have any obstacles in chatting. Yunzhao, my appetite hasn't been very good recently. Since you're a famous doctor, why don't you take a look at me? After a while, Xiang Jin and Jing Fan walked in front of her and said. Jing Yunzhao had always placed importance on her body. Hearing Xiang Yunzhao's words, she didn't say anything else and pulled Xiang Yunzhao's wrist. The moment she tried, the corner of her mouth twitched. Sister Xiang, you're pregnant. Looks like I have to prepare a big red packet. When Xiang Jin heard that, she was stunned. Pregnant with what? What else is there? Of course, it's the child. Jing Yunzhao was a little speechless. But Xiang Jin's eyes instantly widened. That's impossible. I've been married to my ex-husband for so long, and we didn't have a child just now. Asking Jing Yunzhao to take a look at her illness was just something that came out of her mouth. She didn't think much about it, so Jing Yunzhao's sudden diagnosis really made her unable to accept it. It was too shocking. Of course, if this was true, then it was indeed a joyous matter. She was not young anymore, but she had never given birth to a child. She even doubted whether she could give birth again. Although Pak Yuan never cared about these things, the two elders of the Bai family definitely still hoped to have grandchildren. So sometimes she would fantasize, but after the fantasy ended, she would sigh and feel regret. Sister Xiang, do you not believe me? If that's the case, you can go to the hospital and check it out yourself, Jing Yunzhao said seriously on purpose. Jing Yunzhao wasn't someone who liked to joke. Now that he said so, Xiang Jin hesitated. Really? Of course. Jing Yunzhao was absolutely certain. Xiang Jin's eyes reddened. Why are you crying? Isn't this a good thing? Jing Yunzhao was a bit speechless, but at this moment, Bai Yuan's gaze turned towards them and coincidentally saw Xiang Jin's tears falling. He immediately rushed over. Jing Yunzhao instantly had a headache. Big brother Bai wouldn't suspect that she was bullying him, right? What's wrong? Are you not feeling well, or something? Pak Yuan was so anxious that his face changed. Xiang Jin was a very strong woman. Since he knew her until now, he had never seen her cry. Therefore, he was so nervous. Pak Yuan's face was full of resentment. He looked at Jing Yunzhao bitterly. Jing Yunzhao shrugged innocently and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's not good for the child if you cry again. After that, Xiang Jin twitched and immediately swallowed her tears. Old Bai, why are you looking at Yunzhao? I'm just happy. Xiang Jin pushed Pak Yuan and said, Yunzhao said that I have a child. Chapter 1332. Pak Yuan's expression was almost the same as Xiang Jin's when he heard the news. Jing Yunzhao hurriedly assured him, and Pak Yuan finally believed him. He immediately picked Xiang Jin up and swung her around 3 times without caring about the situation. His surprised laughter stunned everyone around him. To Jing Yunzhao, having an extra life was just a small matter in the medical field. However, when she saw the couple's reaction, she suddenly felt a little touched. She subconsciously touched her lower abdomen, but after that, she couldn't help but laugh. Nothing had happened between her and Li Xiaoyan, but she was already fantasizing about having a child. It was all Li Xiaoyan's fault for appearing in her room from time to time recently. If this continued, the two of them might not be able to hold their bottom line and get pregnant before marriage. Ah Zhao, I want to have a child too. Jing Yunzhao was thinking when she suddenly felt a hot breath beside her ear. She was immediately shocked. She glared at Li Xiaoyan and said faintly, I don't have the ability to make you have a child. Li Xiaoyan's mouth twitched. I do. He gently pinched her waist and teased her. Jing Yunzhao's face was slightly red. She turned her head and pursed her lips as if she didn't hear anything. At the side, Jing Fan looked at Li Xiaoyan curiously, but she quickly retracted her gaze and looked at the people around her. Among these people, other than Xiang Jin and Pak Yuan, she didn't know anyone else. However, she could tell that they were all extraordinary people, and there was even a celebrity that everyone liked. Yunzhao, this is Jing Fan, right? After a while, Xiao Haiqing asked. She didn't have a good impression of Jing Yunzhao, or rather, she was a little worried. She was afraid that this girl would stab Jing Yunzhao in the back. After all, her parents weren't good people. Jing Yunzhao nodded. When Hui Tianxian heard this, she also came over. Jing Fan? Has the same surname as you? Oh, I know. Isn't she the famous junior in our school? Half a year ago when she just entered school, everyone said that she and you were both top scorers in Yang province. Maybe you're sisters. Jing Yunzhao smiled and didn't say anything. It wasn't to the extent that they were biological sisters. Back then, she had just casually helped her and didn't think too much about it. However, because of her previous identity, Jing Fan had called her big sister at that time. So, she had never felt that there was anything wrong with it. Xiao Haiqing observed Jing Fan from the side. Seeing how nervous Jing Fan was, she felt a little complicated. Thinking about it carefully, Jing Fan's past actually made people sympathize with her. She was just a little girl. It seemed a little too cruel to look at her through colored glasses. Hui Tianxian, on the other hand, was a typical rich lady. She rarely gave face to others. When she noticed that Jing Yunzhao and Xiao Haiqing's attitudes were strange, she asked directly, but it's also strange. Yunzhao, weren't you an orphan before? Where did this sister come from? Jing Fan's face paled. I have some fate with Jing Fan, so I took her as my godsister, Jing Yunzhao said after some consideration. After saying that, Jing Fan's eyes flashed and he looked at her in disbelief. Yunzhao. Xiao Haiqing frowned. From what I know, the Jing family's bloodline is very important. You're also the only child. If you'd taken a godsister with the same surname, wouldn't it be bad? That's true. Jing Yunzhao nodded. Xiao Fan, if you're willing, how about you join the Jing family's side branch? There are many side branches in the Jing family. Some of them are broken. If you're willing, you can also take on the responsibility of being part of the Jing family. Of course, there are also some responsibilities. Chapter 1333. This responsibility sounded very simple. From now on, she would only recognize the Jing family. No matter who asked, she could no longer be the daughter of the swindler from before. In addition, she would also have to pass down the inheritance. In the future, she would have to try her best to think of the Jing family. There were many rules. However, Jing Fan was completely stunned. She had never thought that Jing Yunjiao would ask her this question, because she had always been clear about her own identity. Even though she called Jing Yunjiao Jiejie, she had never dared to ask for anything. After all, to be able to obtain so much was already considered lucky. After her biological parents were released from prison, she met them once. They were even worse than before. Their days were not good, so they simply married her biological sister off for a betrothal gift of tens of thousands of yuan. As for her younger brother, who was like a little emperor, he was still very unruly. At such a young age, he was still cheating. She had once thought that if her parents repented, she would be willing to abandon all the identity that Jing Yunjiao had given her and go back to give her parents a chance. She would support them until they grew old and repay this bit of blood debt. However, reality disappointed her and made her even more determined about her future path. "Are you unwilling?" Jing Yunjiao saw that she was in a daze and asked again. Jing Fan immediately reacted. She instantly sobbed and nodded. I'm willing." She didn't know what kind of big family the Jing family was, but she knew that as long as she agreed, she should have a family. Moreover, it wouldn't be the family that only knew how to bully and scold her. She didn't have to be afraid that one day, the people around her would hate her. She didn't have to worry about floating around like a leaf of duckweed without a foundation. All this time, she had worked so hard and was so worried and afraid because she wanted to obtain recognition, especially from Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao also smiled and reached out to pat her shoulder. "All right, don't cry. After today, I will ask the Jing clan elders to help you enter the genealogy." Although it was only a genealogy, it could not be underestimated. It would record her name and her life story. As long as she did not do anything to betray the Jing family, no matter how hard her life was in the future, she would still have a way out. Just like her father, Jing Tianyi, who was not on the genealogy. So even though he was a member of the Jing family, he still had no one to protect him. She, on the other hand, was listed on the genealogy after Yu Yufu met her. Otherwise, the elders of the Jing family would not have agreed to unite with her so easily. Jing Fan nodded. Xiao Haiqing breathed a sigh of relief. Although they were both from the Jing family, they were not of the same bloodline, so there was nothing to worry about. When she first saw Jing Fan's timid and weak face, she felt a little unhappy. But now that she looked at him again, she couldn't help but mock herself. Jing Fan was different from her, or Jing Yunjiao. It was normal for him to be timid. She was the one who always thought too badly of others. Jing Yunjiao didn't talk for long, but the two of them were already crying. Xiao Haiqing couldn't help but tease her. Jing Yunjiao could understand that Jing Fan was more confident than before. In the past, her self-introduction was very weak. When people asked her where she was from, she could only say that she was from Yang Province. No matter if it was her parents or family, they were all blank. But she was not an orphan. But now, she finally had a background. Jing Yunjiao also knew that she was partly responsible for Jing Fan's panic in front of her. Because back then, he only gave her a name and transferred her to a school, but he never gave her a proper position. At that time, Jing Fan was only a 14-year-old girl. It was not easy for her to not go to extremes. Chapter 1334. Since Jing Yunjiao had decided to let Jing Fan join the Jing clan, he would naturally do as he said. After the commotion with the crowd, he told Jing Rong about this matter the next morning. After so many years, the number of descendants in the Jing family had been dwindling, especially during the time of war. It caused many of the side branches to completely lose their descendants. If there was someone to inherit the family, it would naturally be a good thing. However, the Jing family was still a big family after all. It was impossible for them to casually allow an outsider to enter the family. If it was under normal circumstances, they would also have some requirements for Jing Fan, such as his medical skills. However, with Jing Yunzhao's recommendation, an elder like Jing Rong also had to give some face. After meeting Jing Fan and explaining the Jing family's rules, he was no longer overly picky. It wasn't troublesome to add a name to the family tree. After all, it wasn't the old era where they had to perform various rituals. Now, all they had to do was burn incense for their ancestors and meet some elders. Even so, after a few days of torment, Jing Fan still looked like he couldn't take it anymore. However, he was still in good spirits. His whole body radiated a youthful aura, which made people feel more comfortable looking at him. "Sister, I have something to tell you." After the ceremony, Jing Fan said in private. His expression was nervous and expectant. Since Jing Fan was now a member of the Jing clan, it wasn't appropriate for him to continue living in Pak Yuan and Xiang Jin's house. Moreover, Xiang Jin was pregnant now, and their relationship would definitely warm up quickly. It wasn't good for a girl like Jing Fan to be a third wheel every day. The Jing clan's old residence was ridiculously big. Hence, Jing Yunzhao had someone prepare a room for Jing Fan in the auxiliary building for him to stay in temporarily. Other than her, Xiao Haiqing's room was also prepared in the past 2 days. Haiqing owed her a lot of debt. Hence, other than the necessary expenses, he didn't spend much money. Jing Yunzhao was afraid that she wouldn't treat him well. Hence, he tied her to his side to live with him. There was no one else in the Jing clan's old residence. Even the elders of the Su family didn't come. Hence, Xiao Haiqing agreed without any pressure. "If you have anything to say, just say it. There's no need to be so polite," Jing Yunzhao said as he teased Black King. Jing Fan was a little hesitant, but after a while, he continued, "I recently got a boyfriend." Jing Yunzhao was stunned and looked at her in surprise. Jing Fan was usually a very boring person. It was hard to imagine that someone with her personality would fall in love so early. Although she was already in university, she had skipped a grade, so she was still a minor. Of course, although she had met Li Xiaoyan early, her heart was not that of a little girl. "How are they?" Jing Yunzhao asked. "He's really a good person and always cares about me. Every day when I go to school, he sends me breakfast and even takes the initiative to reserve a seat for me in the library. He knows very well what classes I have and has never minded my background. Sis, actually, I just want to focus on my studies, but he's really good to me, so I couldn't help but agree to his confession." Jing Fan mustered up his courage and said. Jing Yunzhao had seen a lot of pure love in university. Hence, when he heard her say this, he didn't feel dissatisfied. "Since you're moved, then there's no problem. However, don't be too infatuated with a guy. Your studies are more important." After Jing Yunzhao finished speaking, he felt as if he had aged a few decades. When he spoke, he sounded like an elder. Chapter 1335. As soon as Jing Yunzhao relented, Jing Fan let out a sigh of relief. Then, he suddenly remembered something and said, "Oh right, Han Nan is in the same class as you." Before he could finish, Jing Yunzhao's expression froze. Her eyes flashed with coldness as she retracted her hand that was playing with Heidi. "Han Nan? He's your boyfriend?" Jing Yunzhao asked. Jing Yunzhao's heart skipped a beat. She didn't quite understand. The change in her attitude was too sudden. It was as if she had a big problem with Han Nan. However, she had always heard Han Nan praise Jing Yunzhao. Logically speaking, the two of them were just ordinary classmates. How did you two meet? Jing Yunzhao asked seriously as she sat down. Jing Fan panicked. "A few months ago, when I went to look for you, I bumped into him as soon as I came out of the dormitory. We chatted for a bit, and I found out he was your classmate. After a while, we became familiar with each other." She usually kept her distance from boys, but Han Nan was very aggressive. He showed up on time every morning and was very gentle. Before she even agreed to Han Nan, everyone in the class already thought that Han Nan was her boyfriend. At first, she wasn't moved, but her friends in the dormitory kept praising him. As time passed, Han Nan gave her a different feeling. Other than Jing Yunzhao and Xiang Jin, there had never been anyone who treated her so wholeheartedly. From Han Nan's body, She could feel a kind of warmth that made her sink deeper and deeper. Every time she thought of him, her heart would feel like it was on a roller coaster, making her crazy and intoxicated. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and asked Jing Fan to tell her everything that had happened between the two of them. She felt that Han Nan's feelings came too suddenly. She was very sensitive. When Han Nan was in class, he didn't restrain his passionate gaze. If he still paid attention to her like before, then why did he suddenly care about Jing Fan so much? Jing Yunzhao secretly shook her head. She didn't believe it at all. It wasn't that Jing Fan wasn't charming, but Han Nan didn't look like he was in love at all. Little Fan, does Han Nan know that you know me? Jing Yunzhao asked after a moment of consideration. Jing Fan shook his head firmly. He doesn't know. I didn't tell anyone about this. She didn't know why, but she couldn't help but reveal her past identity. However, she didn't want to publicize her relationship with Jing Yunzhao, even to Han Nan. In my opinion, Han Nan is not suitable for you. After a while, Jing Yunzhao said. Seeing her pale face, Jing Yunzhao said, since I've recognized you as my sister, it's for your own good. Han Nan is too stubborn, and he has some old grudges with me. From what you said just now, he hid this from you, so I'm sure he doesn't have any good intentions. Since Han Nan didn't know about their relationship, then perhaps it was because of Jing Fan's title as Yang Province's top scholar. He was a stubborn and twisted person. It was very likely that he shifted his target to Jing Fan in order to satisfy his perverted sense of accomplishment. Although Jing Fan's personality was still lacking, he was still a very kind and simple person. She didn't want her to fall into the hands of a scumbag. Their relationship hadn't developed for long, so if she killed him now, there was still a chance for her to stay. Chapter 1336. Jing Yunzhao's attitude was straightforward. She didn't hide the reason why she made this decision for Jing Fan's sake. She had always been like this. Instead of being secretive, it was better to be straightforward and avoid any misunderstandings. She believed that if Jing Fan was really sensible, he should be able to understand the stakes involved. Sis, no way, right? Do you have any old grudges? But he said that he was also your fan. He also said that you two often did classwork together in class and worked together very happily. Oh, right, he didn't know my identity, so he said that he could introduce me to you in the future. He shouldn't have deliberately used you to lie to me. Jing Fan was completely dumbfounded and couldn't react in time. The human heart is unpredictable. Jing Yunzhao looked at her and shook her head. She said, if you don't believe what I said, I can take you to my class to ask around. I guarantee that everyone knows about the conflict between me and him. Of course, just because we have a conflict doesn't mean that you guys can't be together. But the problem is that he definitely isn't sincere towards you. She believed that the human heart was unpredictable, but she insisted on letting Jing Fan enter the Jing Corporation. She also believed in her own judgment and her kind nature. She didn't want a person like her to slowly become unfamiliar because of some materialistic things. Jing Fan's body trembled. She didn't believe the words of others, but how could she not believe Jing Yunzhao's words? She had no reason to lie to her, but why did Han Nan, if she had known about this a few months earlier, or even 2 months earlier, she wouldn't have felt so bad. Hence, in this short period of time, she had fallen too deep. She couldn't imagine that behind that gentle and handsome face, there was a malicious intent hidden with ulterior motives. Jing Fan's voice was hoarse. She lowered her head. I'll go ask him, sis. He's really good to me. Jing Yunzhao sighed. How about this? It's impossible for you to cut ties with him. I'll give you a chance to make your own decision. Since you two are a couple, you will definitely meet each other even during the holidays. Next time, find a chance to tell him about our relationship and see how he reacts. Jing Yunzhao thought for a moment and continued, but every time you meet, you have to make sure that it's in a safe place with a lot of people around. It can't be too remote. Also, it's best if you record it.
Can you do that?
Jing Yunzhao was absolutely certain that once Han Nan found out about their relationship, not only would he not break up, but he would also stick closer to him. He might even use some extreme methods to force Jing Fan to do certain things for him. Women in love were all stupid. If Jing Fan didn't know, he would definitely be used. Jing Fan also thought about it. His eyes were bloodshot, but he still nodded in the end. He took the recording pen from Jing Yunzhao's hands in a daze. She thought that she was the happiest person in the world right now. She had an identity that no one would look down on. She had also become Jing Yunzhao's legitimate sister, and she even had a gentle and handsome boyfriend. But who would have thought? Jing Fan gritted his teeth and clenched the recording pen in his hand. His emotions were complicated. Jing Yunzhao also felt that he was a little cruel, but he didn't regret his decision. Then, he took the initiative to tell Jing Fan what the so-called conflict between the two of them was. After Jing Fan heard this, his eyes were a little serious. He was silent. The naive and innocent expression slowly disappeared and was replaced by sadness and confusion. Chapter 1337. 2 days later, Jing Fan wore a thick down jacket and went to the appointment. Before she left, she told Jing Yunzhao that she would be there. Jing Yunzhao just nodded and didn't say anything else. After all, it was better for her to see it with her own eyes. Both of them were ordinary students, and the location of their date wasn't some expensive place, but an ordinary food street. Han Nan arrived early. He was wearing a black down jacket, and his fair face was a little red from the cold. When he saw Jing Fan walk over, he immediately became eager and rushed forward to help her carry her bag. Xiao Fan, how did you get here? School is about to start. Everyone is taking advantage of the time to come out and play. The traffic is especially bad, Han Nan said. Jing Fan couldn't believe that the boy in front of her was such a thick-skinned person. When she saw him, she felt her heart flutter and her heart beat wildly. However, she had no choice but to test what kind of person he was. If only people's feelings could be controlled. It would be good if he didn't immediately take back his heart. My sister's dropping me off somewhere nearby, Jing Fan lied. The Jing family had a driver. Why would Jing Yunzhao need to drop her off personally? She was just looking for an excuse to tell him the truth. Your sister? Didn't you say that you only have one brother and one sister, and that you don't contact them anymore? Han Nan was stunned. He suddenly had a strange premonition. This premonition had been there ever since he saw Jing Fan. At this moment, it was the strongest. Actually, I've been hiding something from you. Jing Yunzhao is my sister. However, she's not my biological sister. We just happen to have the same surname. Back then, my parents were sent to prison for harming her. However, she was very good to me. She changed my name and school for me. She was my sponsor. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to go to university, Jing Fan said seriously. She would always remember that day. The day her life changed completely. There was no endless abuse and slavery. There were no parents who favored boys over girls. There were no chores that she couldn't do, or siblings that were hard to take care of. The future was different. When Han Nan heard this, his breathing stopped for a moment. Soon, a trace of ecstasy appeared in his heart. However, he quickly restrained himself. Then did you tell her that I'm your boyfriend? Jing Fan bit his lips and shook his head. That's good. Xiao Fan, you don't know this, but your sister is very possessive. She and I are very close, and a lot of people in class think that we're a golden couple. But I'm really just friends with her. If she finds out that I'm with you, I'm afraid that she won't treat you well, Han Nan quickly said. Jing Fan's eyes flashed. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. At first, she still had some fantasies in her heart. She hoped that it was all a misunderstanding, or that his thick skin was all in the past. Now, he had completely woken up and was sincere to her. But now, he actually said that he and Jing Yunzhao were a golden couple? She didn't know much about other things, but she still knew a little about Jing Yunzhao. Jing Yunzhao was a cold and aloof woman. She had a lot of friends by her side, both male and female, but she had never been too intimate with any of them. Moreover, she had just met her mysterious brother-in-law. Even if she didn't observe him closely, she knew that he was stronger than Han Nan, and not just by a little bit. If Jing Yunjiao was really possessive of a man, then she could only believe that the man was her brother-in-law, Li Xiaoyan, and not Han Nan. Chapter 1338. Jing Fan's lips couldn't help but tremble. Her eyes filled with tears. It was as if she could hear the sound of her heart breaking. "Little Fan, did you hear what I said?" Han Nan asked again. Jing Fan nodded. "Don't worry. Even though Jing Yunjiao is very outstanding in my eyes, she's not as good as you. You're kind and pure, but actually, she's a bit vicious. Everyone in class knows that. That's why you have to be careful. Even though she sponsored you, she's just a hypocrite. You have to plan for yourself and guard against her. Don't let her do anything to hurt you," Han Nan said. The reason he dared to say these words so boldly was because he didn't believe that Jing Fan didn't have any resentment in her heart. They both had the same surname, Jing, and were both Yang Province's top scorer. Jing Yunjiao's radiance was boundless, her family background was not poor, and everyone adored her. On the other hand, Jing Fan was just an extremely ordinary student. She was younger than Jing Yunjiao by 2 years and had received Jing Yunjiao's financial support. That long meant that she would have to submit to Jing Yunjiao for the rest of her life. She would always be in the shadows and could only be Jing Yunjiao's shadow. Who would be willing? He felt that no matter how pure and kind Jing Fan was, there was no way she would be so willing. However, Han Nan underestimated a person's faith. Jing Yunjiao was Jing Fan's faith. He was the pillar of her life and her guiding light. Even though Jing Yunjiao hadn't seen her many times over the years, even though Jing Yunjiao didn't really care about her, she received more from him than she did from her biological parents. She knew in her heart that without Jing Yunjiao, Xiang Jin wouldn't have taken care of her like that. She remembered her kindness very clearly from the beginning. She suddenly wanted to raise her trembling hand and slap him, but she quickly restrained herself. She looked up at the boy who made her heart ache, her senior, and said, "I know, I'll be careful. But why didn't you say that before?" "Before? I don't like to talk bad about people behind their backs. If it weren't for the special relationship between you two, I wouldn't have reminded you." "Xiao Fan, you don't think I'm someone who likes to gossip, do you?" Han Nan said as he pinched her cheeks. Jing Fan endured the discomfort and shook his head. "That's good." Han Nan let out a sigh of relief. He quickly dragged Jing Yunjiao along and bought her favorite candy, chestnuts. Then, as if he wasn't careful, he said, "Xiao Fan, what does Jing Yunjiao do during the holidays? For example, do you know where to go and who to meet? I've heard some people say that her private life is a bit messy. Could it be true? Anyway, I've seen 2 or 3 men pick her up together, and they don't look too decent." When Jing Fan heard this, his face tensed up. That feeling was like eating a dead fly. No matter how tasty the chestnut was, it was tasteless. "She doesn't do anything at home. She just goes out to play occasionally," Jing Fan said casually. "Then, can I ask you for a favor?" Han Nan thought for a moment and asked. In front of Jing Fan, he had enough confidence. Although he had attacked her fiercely before and seemed to be infatuated with her, after he got her, this innocent little girl had fallen even faster. She had already given up more and more. He could even feel her burning gaze that made her want to give up everything. He believed that as long as he had enough reason, Jing Fan would definitely be used by him. Chapter 1339. Han Nan's face was brimming with confidence. He originally thought that he had only found a substitute for Jing Yunjiao and wanted to vent the grievances in his heart, but this sudden surprise gave him a feeling of happiness and satisfaction. As long as everything went well, he believed that it wouldn't be long before Jing Yunjiao was his. "What is it?
Tell me."
Jing Fan's voice was soft, as if he was waiting for something. "I want you to ask your sister out alone. Next time I'll give you some medicine so you can tie her up and find a secluded place. I want to talk to her, but don't misunderstand. The reason why I want you to drug her isn't because I want to do anything bad. The main reason is because your sister, she's too violent." Han Nan smiled bitterly and continued, "I'm afraid that before I can explain, She'll knock me out. I must prove to her that my love for you is real. I hope she can understand that it's impossible between us. What do you think?" Han Nan continued. Women in love are easy to be stupid, but she wasn't an idiot. Believe Han Nan's words? Even if Jing Yunzhao hadn't reminded her, she wouldn't have believed his sincerity. This was because his attitude was too different from usual. Perhaps it was because he suddenly knew about her relationship with Jing Yunzhao that he used such a clumsy trick. As soon as Han Nan finished speaking, he saw Jing Fan's pupils dilate a bit. He immediately felt that he was being a bit too impatient. Afraid that Jing Fan would have some suspicions, he quickly said, "I was just joking with you. I'm not a pervert. How could I do something like that?" He would use that trick in the future, but only when Jing Fan was even more dead set on him. The way to make a woman dead set on him was very simple. Take her body, then her heart wouldn't be able to escape. After all, Jing Fan was still so young. How easy would it be to trick him? Jing Fan's brows relaxed. Unknowingly, the two of them were separated by an arm's length. They weren't shoulder to shoulder like before. Nan, take a guess. If my sister didn't want me to be with you, who would I choose? After a while, Jing Fan raised his head and asked with tears in his eyes. Are you going to abandon me? Lil Fan, no matter what happens, we have to face it together. If she's not happy about it, then I'll work even harder to make you happy. If she's really looking out for you, then I have nothing to say. Han Nan said passionately. Even though he said that, he was looking down on them in his heart. Who should he choose? Between a boyfriend and a sponsor who suppressed her in every way, it was obvious that the former was closer. Was there a need to guess? Especially for young girls, not to mention Jing Yunzhao, who is not related to her by blood. Even her biological parents might not be more important than her boyfriend. Then you think I'll choose you? Jing Fan's twinkling eyes curved as he smiled. Isn't that the case? Han Nan said confidently. Jing Fan slowly lowered his head and clenched his fists. Of course not. Han Nan had never experienced the feeling of being rescued from a swamp, so he would never be able to understand what she was thinking. What her parents owed Jing Yunzhao, she also owed Jing Yunzhao. She would never be able to repay her in this lifetime. She knew that she didn't have the ability and wasn't special enough to help Jing Yunzhao, but these things had never stopped her from getting closer to conviction. Jing Fan's tears fell silently. As he lowered his head, he tried to calm himself down. After a while, he said softly, "I'm not feeling well today. Can we find a place to rest?" Chapter 1340. Jing Fan was still young, and his appearance was already delicate and pretty. The way he spoke softly with a pale face indeed made people feel pity for him. Han Nan was also just a normal guy. When he was with Jing Yunzhao, he only experienced setbacks and inferiority. Now that he saw Jing Fan's delicate appearance, his previous self-confidence was instantly restored. His heart was stirred up, and he felt a little excited. Xiao Fan, where are you feeling unwell? Do you want me to go to the hotel next door and find a room for you to rest? Han Nan asked tentatively. There were many places to rest. If it was a normal boy, he definitely wouldn't think of a hotel. He would only think of a restaurant. Although Jing Fan was still young, the children of the poor had to take care of the family at an early age. She was more sensible than others since she was young. Moreover, she had learned a lot from Xiang Jin. Even though she had not seen many boys, she knew what Han Nan was thinking right now. She couldn't help but feel a little ironic. If not for Jing Yunzhao's reminder, she wouldn't even know that Han Nan had such an anxious side. In the past, when she looked at Han Nan, she always felt that he was good in all aspects. He was gentle, handsome, and tolerant of her. He was like a prince on a white horse in a fairy tale. If he had made this suggestion before, she wouldn't have given it much thought. But now, she had already made up her mind. Looking at Han Nan again, she couldn't find any excuses for him. She couldn't help but clench her fists. Her eyes flashed with determination. After a while, she nodded. Han Nan didn't expect Jing Fan to agree. After all, for a girl of her age, getting a room in a hotel was a very sensitive matter. Han Nan subconsciously touched his nose. He suddenly felt a little disdainful. Jing Fan looked very pure, but in reality, she shouldn't be a proper girl. Otherwise, how could she have taken the bait so easily? Just as he was thinking, he saw Jing Fan's body go limp and she fainted. Han Nan was stunned. He reached out to touch her forehead and found that it was boiling hot. Just a moment ago, her face was deathly pale, but now it was bright red. But it was still a little tempting. Her figure wasn't as well-proportioned as Jing Yunzhao's. She was slightly shriveled, but fortunately, her face was rosy and her skin was white. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, making her look like a fairy. Han Nan smacked his lips. This was a rare opportunity. Anyway, she had agreed to go to the hotel to rest. Now that she had fainted, no matter what he did, Jing Fan wouldn't be able to resist. By the time she woke up, what was done would be done. He didn't believe that Jing Fan would be angry with him. After conquering her body, her heart would naturally submit as well. Besides, the two of them were originally boyfriend and girlfriend. In this day and age, wasn't it normal for something to happen? Thinking of this, Han Nan's courage grew a lot. He directly carried Jing Fan and turned to the side road. Originally, he wanted to go to a hotel, but after thinking about it carefully, he realized that if he brought an unconscious girl there, it would definitely arouse suspicion. So, he found a small hotel to stay in. More importantly, this hotel was very cheap. Jing Fan felt Han Nan carrying her step by step. Later, she seemed to have gone upstairs. Not long after she heard the sound of the door closing, she put him down. Only the two of them were left in the room. Han Nan's heart was excited and a little crazy. Looking at Jing Fan's face, his mind couldn't help but think of Jing Yunzhao. Chapter 1341. Jing Fan turned out to be Jing Yunzhao's sister. His luck was really good. It seemed like even God couldn't stand Jing Yunzhao and sent his sister to help him. Xiao Fan, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame Jing Yunzhao. I really like her. Do you know what kind of life I've been living for so long? I can't eat well, I can't sleep well, and I've lost a few pounds. My head is filled with her. But don't worry, I know you like me. I'll definitely treat you well. Once I get her, I'll dump her. Then, you'll be my legitimate girlfriend. As Han Nan spoke, his hand gently caressed Jing Fan's cheek. Then, he began to take off his clothes. Jing Fan felt a slight chill on her body. Only then did she open her eyes in a daze. The moment Han Nan was about to come over, she aimed her head at his head and viciously slammed it against his. Both of them felt dizzy. Jing Fan's body was weak to begin with, so she was about to pass out. But at this time, she gritted her teeth and suddenly took out her phone to aim at Han Nan. She took a few pictures, including the condoms that Han Nan bought at the hotel. She had heard every word of Han Nan's words clearly. If Han Nan only wanted to harm her, then she would feel that she was unlucky. After all, it had always been like this. The only time the heavens cared about her was when Jing Yunzhao appeared. But Han Nan wanted to use her to get close to Jing Yunzhao. She couldn't take it anymore. Even though the love in her heart had yet to dissipate, she loathed the fact that there was a man who was like a bedbug following Jing Yunzhao closely behind her. Only someone like brother-in-law was worthy of her sister. Han Nan, since he had that kind of idea, then he had to disappear. She didn't want any accidents to happen one day, and his plan to succeed. Han Nan didn't know how to react. How could Jing Fan, who had fainted on the bed a moment ago, be so fierce now? She even took a picture of his naked body. But seeing this scene, no matter how stupid he was, he knew he had to fight for it. Without another word, he pounced on the condoms in her hands. Jing Fan had already expected this to happen. No matter what Han Nan did to her today, he was done for. If he stopped now or she escaped, then he would be charged with attempted rape. If he continued, then she would send him to jail even if he threatened her with a photo. Or if he hardened his heart and killed himself, then Han Nan's life would come to an end. A woman who had been betrayed by love would always do things beyond her expectations. In her eyes, she was not just helping Jing Yunzhao get rid of the scourge. More importantly, he was taking revenge for himself. Han Nin clearly knew that she had lived a life worse than an orphan. What she yearned for the most was the word sincerity. Yet, he insisted on using feelings to take advantage of her. Even though he knew that Jing Yunjiao was her sponsor, her sister, he still harbored ill intentions. Was he trying to make her a bad person? Did he want her to betray the only thing she believed in? Just because she was weaker and more pitiful than others, did she have to let him trample on her? At this moment, Jing Fan's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness as he continued to fight with Han Nan. After all, Han Nan was a man, and his hands were heavy. Thus, very quickly, there were bruises on Jing Fan's skin. Even her face was slapped a few times. Chapter 1342. After a short while, Jing Fan was at a disadvantage. She looked extremely pitiful. While she was struggling, Jing Fan said in a trembling voice, "Why are you doing this to me? To think that I trusted you so much. To think that she thought of him as the warm sun that illuminated her life. But it turned out that he was just a dark sewer. Xiao Fan, stop fooling around. Didn't you agree to rest with me just now because you wanted to be with me? Don't worry, I'll definitely treat you well. Stop joking with me and give me the photo." Han Nan coaxed. He was also angry. What was this woman doing? She was scratching and scratching. Nonsense. I'm not feeling well. I'm still having a fever. If you really want me to rest, you should take me to the hospital. As she spoke, Jing Fan's tone suddenly changed. She said timidly, "Don't come over. If you come any closer, I'll call the police." Han Nan was confused. He didn't move, but just as he was thinking, the door was suddenly kicked open. A few police officers rushed in and arrested Han Nan without saying a word. At the same time, a female police officer rushed in front of Jing Fan. Seeing the bruises on her body, she looked at her sympathetically and quickly helped her put on her clothes. Jing Fan let out a sigh of relief. When Han Nan took off his clothes, she had already secretly called the police. It could be said that their conversation was heard by the police. As for the photo, it was just to confirm that she had pressed the button. She had fought with Han Nan for a long time. It was enough for the police to confirm her identity and her location. After all, Han Nan had carried her in so openly. It was already eye-catching. Plus, there was a police station nearby. There was almost a 70% chance that they would succeed. She didn't think that she would personally scheme against someone. Moreover, this person was the man she liked the most. The sadness was real. The tears were also real. They kept flowing. The police officer thought that she had been wronged, so he hurriedly comforted her. After a while, he saw that she had fainted again. Only then did he send her to the hospital. On one hand, they had to examine her injuries. On the other hand, her fever had to be treated. When Jing Yunjiao received the call from the police, he was stunned. His heart was in his mouth. What happened to Jing Fan? Jing Yunjiao asked hurriedly after knowing the other party's identity. It's like this. Jing Fan was abducted by a male classmate to a hotel and was almost raped by him. She's currently injured and has a fever. She's currently in the hospital, the other party explained in detail. When Jing Yunjiao heard this, she didn't say anything else and quickly asked for the hospital's address. Once she heard that it was actually her own hospital, she immediately rushed over with familiarity. When she arrived, Jing Fanren was lying in a normal ward with N4 drip. There was a female police officer beside him. When the other party saw her, she was stunned for a moment. She felt that she looked familiar. "You are..." The policewoman felt that the girl in front of her was very familiar. "Hello, I'm Jing Yunjiao, Jing Fan's elder sister. You were the one who informed me just now, right?" Jing Yunjiao said politely. As soon as she heard the words, Jing Yunjiao, the policewoman immediately reacted. Jing Yunjiao. Wasn't she the youngest entrepreneur in the limelight? Every day, the media would report about her. Unfortunately, there weren't many photos. Even if there were a few, they were only taken from the back or the side, or from a very far angle. Therefore, they only had a vague impression. Chapter 1343. Jing Yunzhao was a girl who was more famous than a superstar. The female police officer's eyes were almost filled with hearts. She couldn't believe that the girl she had saved today was Jing Yunzhao's sister. Her luck was too good. Is this CEO Jing? Hello. That's right. I was the one who called her. She doesn't have many numbers in her phone. She only has one sister in her phone, so The female police officer was extremely excited. Although Jing Yunzhao was very young, she had done a lot of things, especially this hospital. It would definitely make the whole of Jingdu applaud. What was Mingi Hospital like in the past? Although it was big, the environment wasn't good and the treatment was complicated. Ever since Jing Yunzhao took over, Mingi Group's stock price kept rising. The hospital was completely reformed. From top to bottom, there wasn't a single problem. The hospital had both Chinese and Western medicine. The service attitude was much better than before, and it made people feel very comfortable. Of course, the hospital was not the place that people admired and worshipped the most. The most eye-catching thing was the charity she had done. She had built bridges and roads for many poor places and sponsored some schools. There were countless people who had benefited from it. Forget about her. Even if the elders in the family heard Jing Yunzhao's name, they would also give her a thumbs up and praise her. That's right. I'm her sister. Thank you for your help. Jing Yunzhao's attitude remained the same. After saying that, she walked over to check Jing Fan's pulse. Her spirit had been stimulated, so her blood flow was a little poor and her fever was serious. However, it wasn't difficult for her to reduce her fever. It seemed that Han Nan's incident had affected her greatly. Thinking about it, the reason why she was so good to Jing Fan was because she was like her in the past. She was isolated and pitiful. She had lacked love since she was young. When she thought she had met the one she was destined to meet, but in reality, she was deceived. It wasn't as simple as just falling out of love. Youthful love was always bitter. To Jing Fan, this experience was not only bitter, but also a trauma. It was a shadow in his heart. She took out the fever medicine she had prepared and gave it to Jing Fan. She also gave him some medicine to calm him down. After that, Jing Yunzhao asked about the whole story in detail. Right now, the police had a lot of evidence against Han Nan. The first was Jing Fan's photo. The second and most important was the injuries on his body. The third was the recording of Jing Fan's words when he called the police. Of course, there was also the testimony of the hotel owner. It was enough to prove that Han Nan carried the unconscious Jing Fan into the room and that the two of them didn't walk in together because they liked each other. Jing Yunzhao glanced at Jing Fan, who was lying on the bed, and frowned. In the end, she had forced this extremely clean girl to the point where she had to resort to underhanded means. When she saw Jing Fan at Xiang Jin and Pak Yuan's house, she saw her flickering eyes and uneasy appearance. She was worried that Jing Fan would change and that her thoughts would become a little extreme because of her experience. Fortunately, Xiang Jin's personality was gentle and it had a great influence on her. As time passed, the uneasiness in her body slowly faded away. In the end, she still had a good nature. But now that Han Nan had caused such a ruckus, she might not be as naive and trusting as before. She really didn't know whether this was a good or bad thing. Some growth was necessary, but if it was too much, life would be too sad. Chapter 1344. Jing Yunzhao sighed. Her emotions were a little complicated, but she also understood that Han Nan must have done something that she couldn't tolerate for her to make such a decision. Otherwise, if it was just using love, then with Jing Fan's temper, he would be sad but not angry. Right now, that Han Nan is already in our custody, but his parents already know about the situation. Although this is a criminal case, if we can get your forgiveness by using Han Nan, then the sentence won't be too heavy. The female police officer reminded them. At the same time, she also told Jing Yunzhao that there was another way to solve this matter. Even if it was a criminal case, with Jing Yunzhao's status, she could make it simpler. After all, the words attempted rape didn't sound good. Jing Yunzhao was still so young. If this matter was blown up, it wouldn't be good for her future. If both parties were willing to settle this privately, then with Jing Yunjiao's ability, she could also wipe this matter clean. Although Jing Fan's confession wasn't the only evidence, the other evidence might be able to overturn Jing Fan's words. Of course, the choice was mainly up to Jing Yunjiao and Jing Fan. After the female police officer finished speaking, she left. Jing Yunjiao sat by the bed and waited. After about 1 or 2 hours, Jing Fan woke up. He was also moved to a private ward by Jing Yunjiao. It was clean and comfortable, so there was no need to hide some things from others. When Jing Fan opened her eyes and saw Jing Yunjiao, she immediately burst into tears. "Sis, he really isn't a good person. If he's not a good person, then we don't want him. When you're an adult, I'll introduce you to a good boy." Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but soften her heart. Jing Fan was sobbing. After crying, she asked, "Where is he?" "He's at the police station." Jing Yunjiao said, "Little Fan, how do you want to deal with this matter? Let him go to jail? Then it won't be good for your reputation. If we settle this privately, I can guarantee that we'll use other methods to punish him." "No need, I want to sue him." Jing Fan shook her head with a determined expression. She wanted Han Nan to forever remember the consequences of cheating on her feelings. She wanted him to never be able to wash away the dirty water of a rapist. As for her, she would study hard. As for the rest, she would think about it later. Jing Yunjiao looked at her deeply and nodded. In this era, reputation wasn't that important. In addition, Han Nan didn't succeed at all, so it wouldn't affect much. Therefore, she respected Jing Fan's decision. The injuries on Jing Yunjiao's body had already been taken for evidence. There weren't many places that needed Jing Yunjiao's help. However, when Jing Fan fell sick, she could see that he was a little childish. In order to make her feel at ease, Jing Yunjiao had been taking care of him in the ward for the past 2 days. Anyway, the hospital was hers. Wouldn't it be easy to find a place to rest? The more she interacted with him, the more she realized that Jing Fan was a person who was easily satisfied. If she was given too much, she would become fearful instead. What she wanted was just a position, a corner that was not too dazzling. However, in these 2 days, 2 groups of people came to the hospital. The first group of people was Han Nan's parents and close relatives. The other group of people was Jing Tai-jun and Wang Xian Fong, who were invited by Han Nan's parents from Huaning County. They were Jing Fan's biological parents. Han Nan found out about his parents from Jing Fan. Now that it was related to Han Nan's future, they would naturally do anything. Chapter 1345. Jing Yunjiao hadn't seen this pair of fake parents in a long time. When they went to prison, he thought that they would stop after they came out. He didn't expect that other than looking a little older, they didn't look any different from before. There were 2 children beside them, Jing Mingkai, who was spoiled like a little emperor, and Jing Fan's sister, Jing Ling, big sister. "Are you okay, my good daughter? Why did you suffer so much? You were fine, and you were raped. How are you going to get married in the future?" The family divided the work and cooperated. Their acting was really good. Jing Fan's face was ashen. He was still a little scared. How could attempted rape be the same as being raped? Were they really her good parents? Back then, they wanted her to drop out of school to take care of her brother. Now, they wanted her and Han Nan to make money privately. What did they take her for? Where did this shrew come from? This is a hospital, not a place for you to cry. If you cry again, I don't mind asking someone to chase you out. Jing Yunjiao said coldly. Once this voice came out, it immediately quieted down. Wang Xinfang looked at her with trembling eyes. "Big sister,
We were also forced in the past."
back then, that Mrs. He had power and influence. "We didn't dare to disobey. I'm not your family's big sister. Also, the one lying on the bed is Jing Yunjiao, not Jing Xiao. Please distinguish clearly. If you want to take advantage of her, I'm afraid you found the wrong person. Do you really think that I, Jing Yunjiao, am a vegetarian?" Jing Yunjiao was arrogant. His voice was cold, making people tremble uncontrollably. "What Jing Fan? She's clearly Xiaoer. How can I not know what my Xiao looks like?" Wang Xinfang muttered. Miss Jing, we were wrong to recognize the wrong person back then. However, we have already been punished. Now we just want to reunite as a family. Jing Xiao is our family's daughter. You can't stop us, right? Jing Taijun said. So you're saying that you insist on taking her away? Jing Yunzhao wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and asked. Of course. The husband and wife immediately responded. Now, Jing Xiao was no longer a cheap commodity. The life and death of the Han family's son was in the hands of her daughter. As long as her daughter listened to them, agreed to change her testimony, and gave a good explanation to the police, the case might be closed. When the time came, the Han family would give them $1 million and agree to let the two children hold a wedding banquet first. When they reached the age, they would directly get married. That was 1 million. After the couple was released from prison, they could only earn 3,000 to 4,000 yuan a month. With this 1 million yuan, they could buy a good house for their son in the county, get married, and have children. These years of hardship would finally end. Jing Yunzhao obviously knew what kind of wishful thinking they had in mind. When she heard that, she immediately called Xiang Jin and asked her to send a document over. These are her expenses for the past few years. When I first sent her to school, she was only 14 years old. Now, 3 years have passed. In these 3 years, she has learned a lot. Jing Yunzhao laughed coldly, then pointed at the list and explained in detail, her school is the best in Ning City. Even though it's not an elite school, the yearly expenses are still around 200,000, and this doesn't include her daily living expenses. Jing Fan is sensible and skipped a grade, so I'll only give you 500,000 for those 2 years. Other than that, not a single piece of clothing she wears is cheap. Spring, dawn, autumn, and winter are the 4 seasons, and every year, she would buy new clothes. In addition, she also signed up for 4 to 5 cram schools, one of which is an advanced elite education, which costs 100,000 a year. The other schools aren't that expensive, but they're still around 20 to 30,000. Chapter 1346. Other than that, it doesn't include her other expenses. For example, I bought a piano for her. Although it's not the best, it's still a few 100,000. She used to have a chauffeur to send her to and from school. Naturally, this money has to be included. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and sneered. Her eyes were full of contempt. Then, she slowly said, if she's Jing Fan, then as her sister, I should spend this money. But if you insist that she's Jing Xiao, then I won't stop you, but you have to pay me back all the money I spent over the years. I've calculated every single expense, and it's not much, just 1,988,888. This number is quite auspicious, so I won't give you a small change. As long as you pay the money today, you can take her away at any time. Oh, right, there's also the medical fees. Because this is my hospital, the fees were originally waived, but I'm afraid that's no longer possible. This single ward costs over 1,000 a day. Fortunately, the time spent here is compensated. Compared to the 2 million, it's just a small matter. If one were to carefully calculate each expense, the money spent on Jing Fan was indeed quite a lot. However, Jing Fan was indeed more sensible than the average person. She was very thrifty in her daily life. Unless it was given by her or Xiang Jin, she wouldn't ask for anything else. Thus, the 2 million could be considered as Jing Yunzhao forcing her to spend. Of course, to Jing Yunzhao, the necessary expenses were reasonable. Jing Fan was more hardworking than the average person, so she could afford the money. At this moment, even Jing Fan herself didn't expect that she had spent so much money in the past few years. She was completely dumbfounded. Previously, the school and cram school were mostly chosen by Xiang Jin. On one hand, it was because she was interested. On the other hand, most of her classmates would go to some special schools for training. Xiang Jin didn't want her to be too different from the others. Jing Fan felt a little guilty, but at the same time, he felt a little warm. Compared to the pair of parents in front of him, Jing Yunzhao was more like his real family than anyone else, even if he didn't dare to compare himself to her. Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang were both dumbfounded. Raising a child required so much money. Wang Xianfang subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That was 2 million yuan. She and her husband might not be able to earn that much money in their entire lives. But now, in just 3 years, it had been squandered away by a girl? After a while, Wang Xinfang said, "What right do you have to ask us for money?" "That's because you're willing to spend it on a xiao. So you don't want to return it? That's not a problem. After all, every sum of money is recorded. At worst, we'll just have to file a lawsuit. However, don't blame me for not reminding you that Han Nan's case will be settled soon." "It won't wait until the lawsuit is over," Jing Yunzhao said with a faint smile. After these words, the Han couple and Jing Taijun seemed to have become mute. When they came, they had thought it through. This Jing Xiao was their daughter, and taking her away was a matter of course. However, they never expected that Jing Xiao would owe Jing Yunzhao so much money. You are taking advantage of your position to bully others." Jing Taijun, a big man, pointed at Jing Yunzhao in grief and indignation as he scolded, as if he was being persecuted. "I'm not taking advantage of my position to bully others. It's more like bullying animals." Jing Yunzhao leisurely walked to the side and picked up an apple to peel it. He continued, "I forgot to tell you just now. Jing Xiao is your daughter, but Jing Fan isn't. She is now my sister from the same clan. Her father's name is Jing Bai. She has nothing to do with you." Chapter 1347. This was also the reason why Jing Yunzhao wasn't surprised or angry at all. If this couple had insisted on taking Jing Fan away before the genealogy was recorded, it wouldn't be reasonable even if she forced him to stay. But now, Jing Yunzhao changed everything about Jing Fan once and for all. Even legally, her parents were no longer Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang. The peels in Jing Yunzhao's hand fell bit by bit, and the hearts of the people around them also became more and more confused. Jing Taijun and his wife also lost their confidence and became a little weak. "Eldest daughter, if you don't want us to recognize Jing Xiao, it's fine if you don't want us to recognize her. But our family isn't doing well. Look at how hard your brother and sister have been living these past few years. A layer of skin has been peeled off from their faces, and they haven't even grown taller. Can you bear to see that? You can't just take care of Xiao and ignore Ah Ling and Ming Kai, right? Moreover, Han Nan and Xiao are our boyfriend and girlfriend. It doesn't matter if something happens between them. In any case, they'll get married in the future. There's no need to make things difficult for everyone, right?" Wang Xinfang said earnestly. When Jing Yunzhao heard these words, she couldn't help but admire how thick-skinned this couple was. Could it be that they had forgotten what they had done to her? Even now, they still thought that she was their daughter? If Jing Yunzhao still had a bit of a smile on her face before, then now it was completely cold. She looked at the couple in front of her and said coldly, "I think the two of you feel that you haven't been in prison for long enough." As she said that, Jing Yunzhao's gaze suddenly turned to Jing Ming Kai. "A child as old as you should be able to work. If you were to be sold to Heizhou as a slave, the price would be a bit low, but there would definitely be people who would want you. After all, you're white and tender and have a rare appearance." Jing Yunzhao's voice was so cold that it made people feel a chill down their backs. Jing Ming Kai was the husband and wife's lifeblood. When they heard this, their hair stood on end. In their hearts, they were clear that Jing Yunzhao wasn't someone they could offend. There were a lot of rumors about Jing Yunzhao outside, and most of them were praises. She was different from the daughter they had seen in the past. Moreover, she was rich. She was rich to the point that she could do charity to earn a good reputation. In this world, there was a saying that money can make even ghosts turn millstones. Therefore, Jing Yunzhao's words to the husband and wife were not impossible. He immediately cowered. "Don't touch Kai. We don't want a Xiao." Wang Xinfang immediately said. Jing Xiao was worth so much money. How could they afford it? But when Han Nan's parents heard this, they were unhappy. They immediately pulled Wang Xinfang over.
What do you mean by this?
Didn't we already agree on this? If you back out now, what about our Anan? He even called them in-laws. How anxious. This, but we don't have a choice. How about this? Ashio is your family's daughter-in-law anyway. Why don't you buy her back for 2 million? Wang Xinfang said. Jing Yinzhao had really learned something. At this moment, she lowered her head to look at the frightened and resentful Jing Fan. She patted her shoulder. It was not worth it to be upset over this kind of person. They simply did not know what a treasure was. When Jing Fan was young, she woke up early and worked late to help with the housework. She was filial to her parents and had no complaints. As long as the parents were a little more considerate of their daughter, perhaps Jing Fan's heart would soften. She might even abandon Enran, who was by her side, and go to a small place to take care of her parents. Unfortunately, the parents only had one treasure, and that was the boy by their side, and not a girl like Jing Fan. Chapter 1348. Jing Yinzhao had seen quite a few people who valued boys over girls. In the eyes of these people, girls were just tools to earn money for the family, while boys carried the responsibility of inheriting the family's legacy. Naturally, they should enjoy all the pampering. But was Jing Fan bad? He wasn't bad. In fact, he was better than many people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get into a university. It was just that some people had eyes but failed to see. Han Nan's family background wasn't bad, but it wasn't the best either. Taking out 1 million to shut Jing Fan up was already the most he could do. Now that Wang Xinfang had asked them to buy Jing Fan back for 2 million, the couple was furious. The 2 million was for Jing Yinzhao, and Jing Fan's parents were a pair of vampires. When the time came, they would still have to give him the 1 million. In other words, they would have to fork out 3 million. 3 million. Although they were locals in the capital, how could they fork out that much money? Although they had a house and a car, they had already sold the car. Were they going to sell the house too? Even if their son was released, the family wouldn't have a place to live. They would have to sleep on the streets. How would they live? If that was the case, it would be better to let Han Nan stay in jail for a few years. After all, it was just an attempted rape. He wouldn't be sentenced to death. If he behaved well, he would be released soon. When the Han parents thought of this, they looked at Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang with disgust. You want us to spend 2 million to buy a little girl to be our wife? I think you're dreaming. She made my son so miserable. If you really marry her, she'll be a jinx. Mother Han said angrily. Wang Xinfang shrunk her head. She felt guilty. In law, how about this? When Han Nan is released, I'll let A Ling be his wife. I won't ask for 1 million as a betrothal gift. Just 50,000 will do. You can take her away now. What do you think? Wang Xinfang quickly said. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. He thought that Jing Ling would be angry, but when he looked at her, a trace of joy flashed in her eyes. She almost ran to the Han parents with a pitiful look on her face. They were truly mother and daughter. Both were equally thick-skinned. However, what these two families wanted to do now had nothing to do with her. She only knew that whether it was the Han family or Jing Taijun's family, they wouldn't be able to live a good life in the future. Especially that Han Nan. He actually dared to target her and Jing Fan. How could they just pay such a small price? Jing Yunzhao immediately ordered people to chase the two families out. The security guards of this hospital were all retired soldiers. They looked fierce and righteous, which scared the two families so much that their legs turned to jelly. How would they dare to stay? However, he still felt bad. He had made a wasted trip and hadn't absolved Han Nan of his crimes. You don't have to be disappointed. Your father is my uncle from the same clan, not Jing Taijun. Little Fan, remember this clearly. Jing Yunzhao looked at Jing Fan's disappointed face and reminded him. People always had to look forward. Those who always forgot to run back were worse than those cowardly bastards. Yes, I'll remember. From today onwards, I'm only Jing Fan. My parents are dead, and I have no siblings. In the future, my responsibility is to inherit my father's legacy. I'll remember this in my heart. Jing Fan clenched his fists and stared at the door. Her heart was made of flesh. Her biological parents only saw her as an object, so she didn't have the so-called responsibility to support them. Jing Yunzhao looked at her and nodded in satisfaction. Then he asked the nurse to take care of her and walked out. Chapter 1349. Han Nan's case was quickly settled. After all, the crime hadn't been successful, so the sentence wasn't too heavy. With the Han family's constant persuasion, he was only sentenced to 2 years and 3 months. Jing Yunzhao didn't interfere. Although 2 years wasn't a long time, a day in prison felt like a year. She could guarantee that after 2 years, Han Nan would become a cripple. Han Nan was originally a university student with a bright future. When he was suddenly sentenced, it caused quite a stir in the school. However, due to the protection of the victims, not many people knew about Jing Fan. Occasionally, a few people would mention it, but no one would believe them. A university also expelled Han Nan from the school, so he had no future. Han Nan used to have a striking appearance, and his relatives and friends often praised him. Now that the case had been settled, the number of people who interacted with the Han family decreased by a lot. The Han family's reputation was damaged, and with Jing Yunzhao hinting behind their backs, it wasn't long before Han Nan's parents were fired. Power was useful, at least for now. No one dared to make her unhappy for the sake of Han Nan's parents. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for the two of them to find a job. It was the father's fault for not teaching the son well. It wasn't like she hadn't seen the parents' conduct, so she didn't have any qualms when dealing with them. In addition, Jing Yunzhao didn't hold back in prison. Han Nan's fair and clean appearance was pleasing to the eye. Previously, he had always wanted to force himself on her, but now, Jing Yunzhao had allowed someone else to press him down. The people in prison, other than a few who were forced into a corner, were all vicious criminals. There was also a hierarchy. A pretty boy like Han Nan didn't even have the slightest right to speak. Being bullied and humiliated by others was a common occurrence. What's more, even if he was a rapist, he would still be in existence that others despised even if he was in prison. No one would have any sympathy or pity for him. Jing Yunzhao deliberately let him suffer the pain of being forced. Han Nan's days were naturally miserable. Not long after, he fell ill. When he first went to prison, he still had some hope. He fantasized that after he got out, he would definitely find Jing Fan and Jing Yunzhao and make the two sisters bow down to him and admit their mistakes. He even thought of meeting some powerful people in prison who could help him in the future. However, only after coming into contact with reality did he realize that fantasies were all fragile. The prison guards had stern faces, while his fellow inmates were like starving wolves who wanted nothing more than to swallow him alive. No matter what he did, there would be people who would pick on him. Being beaten was a common occurrence. He had tried to resist, but he couldn't compare to those people in the prison. He was almost immediately caught by the prison guards, who felt that he was causing trouble and that his life would be even more difficult. He was sentenced to 2 years and 3 months. That was how long he stayed in there. When he came out, he no longer looked like a young man. He looked like he was in his 30s. He was sick all over, and there were problems in his heart. He still resented his parents for not finding a way to get him out. The Han family's life was also getting harder and harder. They had moved to a smaller house, and no one in the family went out to work. They were just sitting around and eating. When their son came out, they thought they could still count on him, but they did not expect that there would be another ancestor. There was no day of peace in the house. Chickens and dogs rose to the sky, and the neighbors despised them. Of course, this was all for later. At this time, Jing Yunzhao didn't think too much about it. He just wanted to use Han Nan's body to deal with him. It was reasonable to say that this matter had nothing to do with Jing Yunzhao's family, but the actions of the couple really made Jing Yunzhao unable to tolerate it. Chapter 1350. A few days after Han Nan was sent to prison, on the way home with Jing Tiejuan's family, Jing Yunzhao found a group of people to disperse Jing Mingkai and send him to a small mountain village far away. Although that place was poor, the parents that Jing Yunzhao found for Jing Mingkai were at least able to distinguish between right and wrong. The family was poor, and there was one more person to feed. Naturally, they could not support Jing Mingkai, so every day before the sun rose, they would make Jing Mingkai work in the fields. Jing Mingkai was not young anymore, 13 years old. Children of ordinary families could not even talk about working, but he was an idiot. After arriving at the small mountain village, he thought about running away all day and night. His family did not stop him, letting him go. However, after passing a road, there was a mountain road, crooked and crooked, with no end in sight. After falling down who knew how many times, he could see that if he left his current home, only death would await him. But if he did not work, then there would be no food. He was also a smart person, so not long after, he became well-behaved, working when the sun rose and resting when the sun set. Slowly, he seemed to have forgotten about his birth parents and even gradually began to have a sense of right and wrong. Compared to before, he had improved a lot. A child was like a blank piece of paper. It was just that Jing Mingkai's parents had completely destroyed this piece of paper. Now that he had smoothed it out a little, it could still be used. However, the prerequisite was that he had to continue training in this honest environment. Jing Mingkai was Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfeng's flesh and blood. Their child was gone, and the two of them were almost driven crazy. Jing Yunzhao was extremely disgusted with human traffickers and also sympathized with the parents who had lost their child, but he did not have that kind of feeling towards Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfeng. This good child had been raised to be a waste in their hands, and they had insulted a fresh life for nothing. Their love was like a sharp blade, and they cut the child's body with it. They were simply not worthy of being parents. Just like now, they still only had Jing Mingkai in their eyes. After their son was gone, they beat and scolded their daughter, Jing Ling. A few days later, the restless Jing Ling also ran away. Jing Ling was already 15 years old. Since she was young, she had been more scheming than others. Now she was even more so. How could she obediently be beaten and scolded? It was easy for Jing Yunzhao to do all this in secret. However, no matter what the reason was, it was not good to kidnap children. Jing Yunzhao could not help but feel a little uncomfortable. He asked Qin Shui to set up a fund to help some innocent parents find their kidnapped children. It could also be considered as making up for the uneasiness in his heart. After all, there were many ways to harm people. The method she used had broken her principles and bottom line. However, she felt that doing so was the best punishment for the parents, and she had no choice but to do so. Jing Yunzhao earned a lot of money, but he also spent money like water. Almost all of Yunling Medical's profits were used to do good deeds, which puzzled many people. There was no one who did not like money. Jing Yunzhao also loved it, but it was not to the point of obsession. He had a lot of businesses in his hands, and losing Yunling Medical would not affect his life, so he was open-minded. Ah Zhao, your fund was established well. 2 days ago, Old Qi also praised you in front of me for being sensible. However, although your achievements are high and your responsibility is high, as a person, you still can't be too soft-hearted. Jing Yunzhao was studying the accounts and details of the Angel Fund. Li Xiaoyun, who was next to him, sipped his tea and said. Li Xiaoyun's eyes were soft, and he completely understood her heart. I'm not soft-hearted, but I just don't like my methods this time. Jing Yunzhao's eyes darkened. Chapter 1351. Towards people like Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfeng, even if she had to kill them personally, she wouldn't feel guilty. However, they were Jing Fan's parents after all. Not acknowledging them was one thing, but killing them was another. Hence, she couldn't act recklessly. When she was in Huaning County, she once saved a child. That child was almost kidnapped by human traffickers. She chased after him for a few streets. At that time, she knew that although she had a great advantage in her hands, there were some things that she couldn't do no matter what. She wasn't feeling guilty towards Jing Taijun and his wife. Instead, She was reminding herself that she couldn't lose her original intention just because she had too much. I know. My Zhao has a hard mouth but a soft heart. She's tough on the outside but soft on the inside. Li Xiaoyan smiled gently. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Don't. You don't sound like you're praising me. Doesn't she know me? How many people have I killed since I was reborn? She still has a hard mouth but a soft heart. If she really had a soft heart like the Virgin Mary, she probably wouldn't even have a single bone left. She would have been swallowed alive by others long ago. If you have the intention to do good, you won't be rewarded. If you don't have the intention to do evil, you won't be punished. You've done a lot of good deeds, but they weren't for fame or fortune. Although you've used some tricks, most of them were because others forced you to do them. Naturally, you shouldn't be punished. So, if you think about it, there's still a halo above your head. Li Xiaoyan laughed. Am I an angel? What halo? Why don't you say that I have wings on my back? Jing Yunzhao sneered. If you have wings, then you'll become a birdman. When that happens, Heidi will definitely be happy. Do you think I can satisfy him? Li Xiaoyan snorted. Jing Yunzhao was stunned for a moment. Then he threw a pillow at him. Being jealous of a bird. How promising. Oh right, I'm going out today. Do you want to accompany me? Jing Yunzhao asked after throwing the pillow. At this time, Li Xiaoyan was holding the pillow that Jing Yunzhao threw to him. He had already put down the cup. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, You are not usually so obedient.
Who are you meeting today?
In the past, whenever Jing Yunzhao went out, he would just greet his friends, or people like Pak Yuan. Then he would go to school or go home. His itinerary was not complicated, so there was no need for him to worry, and he would not need to follow him all the time. But this time, he suddenly took the initiative, so he could not help but think more. I'm going to meet someone called Young Master Lei. The other party is interested in participating in the fund donation, but he wants me to meet him. Jing Yunzhao's eyes were a little absent-minded, and he felt a little guilty. Although she was rich, it would be better if more people could participate in the foundation. The other party only asked for a meeting and did not say whether she could bring family members, so she took advantage of it. Li Xiaoyan gritted his teeth. Then if I'm not free today, you will go by yourself?
And
Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and nodded with a smile. She felt the anger in Li Xiaoyan's eyes and quickly said, But I will prepare more itching powder and things like that. If the other party is not polite, I will give them all to young Master Lei to have a taste. Itching powder? Li Xiaoyan stared at her. It was just a little itching powder. If she really brought medicine, she should use some poison. It would be best to make that blind guy waste his life and never dare to think about his woman again. You are not going? If not, then I will go by myself?
Jing Yunzhao said again.
She had already given him a heads up. If he got jealous later, it wouldn't be her fault. Chapter 1352. Jing Yunzhao's probing words got the result as expected. Li Xiaoyan didn't give her a chance to leave at all. After going upstairs to change his clothes, he personally sent her there. However, Li Xiaoyan's attire was much more coquettish than before. He was wearing a black shirt with blue dots, a black windbreaker, and a sparkling silver diamond-studded gold watch on his wrist. His shoes were shiny, and his height of 1.85 meters was very appropriate. His pair of long legs were straight and eye-catching. It wasn't too deliberate to dress up, but it could be seen that his clothes were spotless, and his hair seemed to be tidied up slightly. He had some fighting spirit. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help but want to laugh. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that his current appearance was like that of a dragon or a phoenix. Even the simple clothes he usually wore could make his whole person exude an aura that would make people's hearts flutter. Now that he was tormented like this, he looked even more handsome and elegant. His face was full of romantic charm. Why are you so serious? That young Master Lei is just curious about what I look like and wants to meet me. Jing Yunzhao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Since she set up the foundation, she had to bear some responsibilities. Raising funds was one of them. Besides, even if she was doing business, she needed to know whether the partner was square or round. Otherwise, how could she be at ease? Buy one get one free. That person still made a profit. Li Xiaoyun was extremely sour. Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. So, you are a gift? If there is a gift like you, then some women will risk their lives to come and see you. At that time, won't my foundation be overwhelmed? If the gift looked like this, it would be too stressful. I only sell it to you. Others don't talk about it. Li Xiaoyan sneered and looked quite proud. Jing Yunzhao rolled her eyes speechlessly and turned her head away. She really didn't want to see his pride. However, after a while, her gaze couldn't help but fall on Li Xiaoyan. Sure enough, the more she looked at this man, the more handsome he became. She had lived a pure life these years, but now every time she saw Li Xiaoyan's face, she still couldn't help but feel attracted. Moreover, he was attractive not only because of his face, but also because of his temperament. He didn't lack the courage of a man, but also a bit of gentleness. He was extremely attractive. She remembered that the previous serial killer, Wan Xiaoxia's son, was also a handsome man. His beauty was soul-stirring, but it was only the skin that was hard to draw the bones. He always lacked some charm. Along the way, Jing Yunzhao stole a few glances, but her face looked calm and indifferent, as if she was not affected by the beauty. However, when she suddenly looked at Li Xiaoyan, she couldn't help but reveal herself. Subconsciously, she was stunned. And Li Xiaoyan suddenly showed a victorious smile. Jing Yunzhao booked a Western restaurant with young Master Lei. This was her first time here. As soon as she entered the door, she was attracted by the style of the restaurant. She only saw that the lights in the room were dim and ambiguous, swaying slightly, with a bit of charm. The music in the restaurant was melodious. The waiters were all wearing tuxedos and dragging plates. It looked very pleasing to the eye. The restaurant exuded a faint fragrance of red wine, which was intoxicating. In these seats, almost all couples were looking at each other. Some were hot and passionate, some were shy and timid. Everywhere was exuding a smell of hormones. Jing Yunzhao couldn't help sweating. She felt that the man behind her seemed to be surrounded by frost. She could feel a chill. Chapter 1353. Previously, it could be said that young Master Lei was curious about her identity and invited her here to get to know him out of courtesy. But now, that theory was denied. This place was obviously a couple's restaurant, and the other party's intentions were self-evident. Jing Yunzhao pursed her lips and looked at Li Xiaoyan with a guilty conscience. After that, she took a step back and reached out to grab his arm before walking in together with him. Li Xiaoyan's expression became much better, and he whispered in her ear, "Good girl." With the waiter leading the way, the two of them went upstairs together. Jing Yunzhao looked around and finally saw a man with a white rose beside his hand. From his back, this person looked to be in his 20s. His back was slightly plump, causing Jing Yunzhao's mouth to twitch slightly. After that, she helplessly glanced at Li Xiaoyan before approaching him. Another figure appeared, and the man immediately turned to look at her. His eyes flashed with surprise. Just as he was about to speak, he noticed the man standing beside her. "Miss Jing, is it?" "This is..." young Master Lei asked hesitantly. "This is my fiancé. He happened to be passing by and sent me here," Jing Yunzhao said politely. Hearing that, the other party nodded and stared at Li Xiaoyan for a while. Then, he quickly asked the waiter to add a chair and invited the two of them to sit. Looking at this person's eagerness, Jing Yunzhao's heart was beating like a drum. She vaguely felt that she had wronged this young Master Lei. After all, his attitude was still very polite and respectful. Even though this person's appearance wasn't anything special, his actions didn't overstep any boundaries. Moreover, if he really had bad intentions towards her, he would not have let Li Xiaoyan sit down. Jing Yunzhao had always been someone who treated others with respect. She immediately found this person pleasing to the eye, and her attitude became much better. "The two of you are really a match made in heaven. But I never knew that Miss Jing had a fiancé. I'm sorry for my rudeness." May I know your name, sir? Young Master Lei asked again. This young Master Lei was on the chubby side, with some oily pimples on his face. His looks were average, but he wasn't considered ugly. He was just a little fiercer than the average person, so he didn't look very righteous. Li Xiaoyan said simply.
Li?
There aren't many rich and powerful families in the capital with the surname Li, but there's a family of generals with the surname Li, young Master Lei added. After he finished speaking, he secretly pondered in his heart. Although there was a general surnamed Li, he seemed to have heard that General Li's grandson was not young anymore. He did not know whether he was married or not, but he was sure that it was not normal. It was said that his health was not good, so he rarely went out. And if the person in front of her was the young master of the Li family, there should have been rumors about it. Even Jing Yunzhao should have expressed it in front of the media. He would not have kept it a secret when he was engaged. Since it was not the Li family, there was no problem. A warm smile appeared on young Master Lei's face. It came so suddenly that it scared Jing Yunzhao. This young Master Lei was very polite just now, and there was still some kindness on his face. Now, his smile was a little exaggerated, and it made people feel very uncomfortable. Mr. Li should be about the same age as me, right? Which company do you work in? Young Master Lei asked, and then he said, Miss Jing, I donated 20 million yuan to your angel fund. I wonder if Mr. Li can be the fund manager? Chapter 1354. At this time, Jing Yunzhao only felt an indescribable strangeness. Young Master Lei, I'm afraid I can't do as you wish because my fiancé has other things to do. Jing Yunzhao frowned. It's just a name. I saw that Miss Jing specially brought her boyfriend over today. I think she usually doesn't like to go out alone. Since that's the case, it's best if Mr. Li can talk to me directly in the future. It's better for men to talk to each other. Young Master Lei replied. As he spoke, young Master Lei smiled and stared at Li Xiaoyan. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao finally understood what was wrong. This young Master Lei's gaze towards Li Xiaoyan was too fervent. It was more like the attitude of those infatuated women outside looking at Li Xiaoyan, but he was a man. Jing Yunzhao felt that his thoughts were really evil. After thinking about it, he sent a text message to Qin Shui to ask. Qin Shui was mainly responsible for the foundation project this time, and this young Master Lei also came to her with a request. At that time, she wanted to refuse, but after thinking about it, 20 million was not a small amount. It was just a meeting. If the other party generously donated, it would be a good thing. Moreover, Qin Shui also said that this young Master Lei appreciated women who were independent and self-reliant. There were not many scandals outside, so she was relieved to come over. Jing Yunzhao asked at this time, of course, about this young Master Lei's sexual orientation. Does this Lei de Bao like men? In the text message, Jing Yunzhao asked directly. Soon, he received a reply. Jing Yunzhao looked, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He only saw the text message that said, How did Chief Jing know? If you didn't like men, I wouldn't be so relieved to let you go. Jing Yunzhao secretly cursed in his heart. Then, he looked up at Lei de Bao and a feeling of nausea instantly surged in his heart. Young Master Lei, this foundation's matter has already been handled by someone. It's not suitable to recruit new people. However, you have already promised that as long as I come to meet you, you will invest 20 million. You won't go back on your words, right? Jing Yunzhao's eyes were slightly dangerous. Of course, I, Lei de Bao, have never gone back on my words. But Lei de Bao looked at Li Xiaoyan. After a while, he stared at Jing Yunzhao and said, When does Miss Jing plan to get married? I'm afraid this has nothing to do with the donation this time, right? Jing Yunzhao suppressed his anger. Indeed, I'm just asking out of curiosity. After all, it's rare to see such an excellent man like Mr. Li. He can be considered the best. Young Master Lei smiled and then continued, Mr. Li and I hit it off at first sight. I wonder if Miss Jing could make it convenient for me to have a meal with Mr. Li alone? 500,000 for a meal, 1 million for a night, and 5 million for a day. What do you think? At this point, he was already very direct. Jing Yunzhao exhaled, looking as if he wanted to strangle Lei Debao to death. Needless to say, Li Xiaoyun's expression was as if he had eaten a dead fly. Jing Yunzhao could already feel the murderous intent emanating from him. Li Xiaoyun had always been clean. Except for those brothers who had a good relationship with him, there were almost no outsiders who could get close to him. Today, if it weren't for the fact that he didn't want his woman to be seduced, he wouldn't have made a special trip. He didn't expect to meet such a weirdo. His stomach was churning with disgust. Miss Jing's status isn't low. With your ability, it shouldn't be hard for you to find someone of equal social status. Even though this Mr. Li's looks are a bit better, he can't possibly be General Li's grandson, right? He really doesn't match you at all. Why don't you just sell him to me in one go? You can name any price you want, what do you think? Seeing that Jing Yunzhao was unhappy, Lei Debao continued. Chapter 1355. Jing Yunzhao's eyes were burning with anger. After a few seconds, she took a deep breath, raised her hand, and directly poured the water in the cup on the table. Sell it to you? Sell it to your uncle. Jing Yunzhao immediately cursed. In the next second, she stood up and dragged Li Xiaoyun, preparing to leave. However, before she could even take a step, her anger surged up again. She glanced at the candles used for flirting. Without another word, she picked it up and threw it under Lei Debao's lower abdomen along with the flame. In an instant, Lei Debao was so scared that he jumped up from the ground. The candles fell to the ground, but his clothes were on fire. He immediately shouted, "The fire in Jing Yunzhao's heart has not been extinguished. Why would she care about him?" She directly left without looking back. Take a fancy to her man? If it was a woman, she would feel a bit better. After all, women are at least a bit more pleasing to the eye. But this Lei Debao has a disgusting face, and now he actually did such a disgusting thing. If she doesn't teach him a lesson, she is afraid that she won't be able to eat for a few days. Jing Yunzhao looked angry. Her cold and arrogant attitude made it seem as if she has a monstrous enmity with Lei Debao. She strode away, and no one stopped her. The restaurant was already in a mess. However, what Jing Yunzhao didn't know was that the moment she stepped out of the door, someone downstairs was also attracted by the commotion and saw her back. "That is Jing Yunzhao, right? Do you know that man?" A woman in the seat asked. Jean Iran chuckled, slowly moving his knife and fork on the plate, elegantly eating, and said, "Li Xiaoyun, the grandson of General Li, the only successor of the Li family." "Is that so?" The woman pursed her lips, and a trace of light flashed in her eyes. Jing Yunzhao, she really lived a good life these years, so good that it made her jealous. "I want that man. What can you do?" The woman directly said, "You are my woman. Saying such words in front of me. You don't seem to give me face?" Jean Iran sneered. "I am not the only woman you have. Besides, I'm not just your woman. I was your brother's woman before."
Didn't I still follow you?
The woman wiped her hands and leaned back. "Iran, I know you like Jing Yunzhao. Otherwise, with your temper, who knows how many times you would have done it already. You wouldn't be only defending and not attacking until now, right? If she marries Li Xiaoyun, you will be sad. I am doing this for your own good." Jean Iran looked up at her and snorted coldly. "You're all ready, yet you still want to maintain your chastity. You're right." Hong Yu was a woman he met 3 years ago. The first time he saw her, she came to his place to ask for a job. She was so young and looked so innocent, but she was very brave. Her eyes were full of restlessness, which piqued his interest. Then he gave her to one of his brothers. She had done a good job. She had stolen a lot of resources from his brother in private, and she had also killed his brother, without a complete corpse. Then, she had officially become his woman. However, this woman's temperament didn't change much. She was still pure and clean, as if those dirty nightclubs couldn't blend in with her. With her appearance, she really deceived many people. "Iran, I know you. If you can't get it, you might as well destroy it. My goal is the same as yours. It shouldn't be difficult for you to give me a chance, right? Xiao Hongyi said slowly and confidently. Chapter 1356. As Xiao Hongye spoke, she touched her own face. Now, even if she stood in front of Jing Yunzhao, she probably wouldn't be able to recognize her. Back then, because of what Jing Yunzhao had said in front of the reporters, the Qiao family had completely become a target of scorn. She was also forced to leave her hometown and live a precarious life by herself. In the beginning, she took a bus and went to 2 or 3 cities. After thinking about it from left to right, she came to the capital. At that time, she only had a few hundred yuan on her and couldn't even afford to rent a house in the capital. Her body was already dirty, so she didn't mind selling herself. She found a nightclub, but she didn't expect to meet Jean Iran there. In the past 3 years, she worked for Jean Iran. She seduced his brothers, some government officials, and Jean Iran's enemies. However, she always hid in the dark and didn't show herself. Even if Jing Yunzhao had suddenly shown her talent in the past 2 years, causing her to be flustered and her heart to be in a mess, she could only endure until Jean Iran was satisfied with her. A few months ago, when she caused the death of Jean Iran and his brother, her face was blown up and she had to undergo surgery. After recovering, she became a completely different person. She only resembled her past self by about 20%. Originally, she wanted to stand in front of Jing Yunzhao and fight with her openly. However, she didn't expect that even her face would be taken away by God. But it didn't matter. Changing her appearance was more beneficial for her. People who are too smart usually don't have a good ending. You don't have the right to guess what I'm thinking. Jean Iran glanced at her and said, "But I do intend to send you out. There are 3 candidates, Li Xiaoyan, Su Wenqing, and Su Hong. One of them is Jing Yunzhao's second uncle, and the other is Jing Yunzhao's cousin. They have a higher chance of success than Li Xiaoyan. Do you want to reconsider?" Jean Iran said. He was well aware of Su Hong's identity. After all, he had used Shin Tong's sister, Shin Shi, as a pawn to gain insight into the Su family. The latter two were closely related to the Su family and had greater influence. What he wanted was for Su Yuantek to live a life worse than death. If he could use these two to infiltrate the Su family, that would be the best outcome. The Su family had always had strict family rules. Su Yuantek and his brother had a good relationship, but what he wanted was for the Su family brothers to fight against each other. It would be best if they hated each other. But I've taken a fancy to that man just now, the man that belongs to Jing Yunzhao, Qiao Hongye said firmly. She had seen the man's appearance clearly. He was even more handsome than Jean Iran. Most importantly, she had never seen Jing Yunzhao so angry over a man before. That look of rage was completely different from before. In the past, Jing Yunzhao was made of stone. She still had some warmth towards her friends, but it was impossible for her to be so passionate towards a man. Therefore, she was moved. Since Jing Yunzhao's heart had been moved, then she wanted to snatch everything Jing Yunzhao wanted and loved, one by one. She wanted to make up for everything that Jing Yunzhao had stolen from her. With your ability, you can't do it. Jean Iran was very direct. How can you be so sure? That Li Xiaoran is also a man, right? He also has weaknesses. Iran, no one in this world knows Jing Yunzhao better than me. We lived under the same roof for more than 10 years. I know her personality too well. The limit of her passion is also a bit cold and arrogant. No man likes this kind of woman. Chapter 1357. Qiao Hongye did not believe that Li Xiaoyun could resist her temptation. How many men had she come into contact with in the past 3 years? She already knew how to grasp a man's heart. As for Jing Yunzhao, she only knew how to put on airs. When it came to dealing with men, it was impossible for her to beat her. But didn't I take a fancy to a woman like Jing Yunzhao? Yi Zi, your arrogance and self-confidence will only kill you. Jean Iran did not take her words to heart. You? You only fell for her because of her uniqueness, but you fell for me more. At least in bed. I can make you happy. If we stand together, I think you would want to have a relationship with a woman like me more, right? Xiao Hongye said again. A pure appearance, a rotten and wanton heart. This was Jean Iran's evaluation of her. But it had to be said that men loved appearance, but what they wanted was wanton satisfaction. If you lose to Li Xiaoyun, you won't have another chance. But just in case, I will arrange it for you. Jean Iran put down the knife and fork in his hand and compromised. Good. Xiao Hongye was overjoyed. Finally, there was a day where she had the chance to make Jing Yunzhao suffer. When she thought of Jing Yunzhao's appearance when she lost her lover, she felt a burst of joy in her body and mind. At the same time, Jing Yunzhao, who had just left the restaurant, felt an inexplicable tightness in her heart. She subconsciously clutched her chest, feeling uncomfortable. Li Xiaoyun saw that her complexion was not good, and his expression became serious. What's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable? It's nothing, just a little stuffy. I should be fine after opening the window for some air. Jing Yunzhao smiled and comforted. Just now, she had an ominous premonition. This kind of feeling rarely appeared. Were you disgusted by that stupid pig just now? Li Xiaoyun asked again. When he thought of that Leda Bao, he felt even more disgusted. Even if he remembered that kind of person was not worthy of him and Ah Zhao to personally take action. Wasn't he a stupid person with a lot of money who wanted to smash the wall to buy her? Then in the future, I'm afraid he'll smash it until he's satisfied. Sorry, I didn't expect that person to like men. As she said this, Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched, and she could not help but laugh. At the same time as she was angry, she was more gloating. After all, Li Xiaoyun's expression just now was too wonderful. It's a pity that she did not have a chance to take a picture of his face. Or else, it could be considered as entertainment once a year. That would be fun to watch once a year. Funny? Li Xiaoyun held his forehead silently. To twos.
To him.
To be. You might as well laugh. Forget it. If you want to laugh, don't hold it in. Laugh as much as you want. But don't tell your second uncle when you go back, Li Xiaoyun said in a muffled voice. Su Wencheng, that guy, had a poisonous mouth and was too scheming. If he knew about this, it was estimated that in the next few months, all kinds of perverted men would appear around him. By then, it would be troublesome. Jing Yunzhao still understood her second uncle. Of course, she knew when to stop. But now, looking at Li Xiaoyun's embarrassed state, she really could not help it. Her shoulders could not help but twitch. Even if she laughed, she was very restrained. This made Li Xiaoyun even more helpless. In the end, he simply let her be. But in his heart, he was already thinking of ways to mess with her. Chapter 1358. Li Xiaoran wasn't someone who would take a loss. After Jing Yunzhao went back, young Master Lei's donation arrived in less than a day. It wasn't the original 20 million, but 200 million. Jing Yunzhao didn't need to think to guess that it must be Li Xiaoyun's doing. After all, the next morning, the media took a picture of Lei Debao and a man. Jing Yunzhao didn't believe it was a coincidence. Although the Li family was usually very low-key, not everyone could afford to offend them. Lei Debao dared to have thoughts about Li Xiaoyun, so he deserved it. Moreover, without guessing, if Li Xiaoyun didn't have enough ability to crush the other party, he would be oppressed by the Lei family in the future. The Angel Fund was progressing smoothly. The power behind Jing Yunzhao was too great. Even if the Li family wasn't included, Su Yuanzhou alone was enough to solve a lot of problems for her. Thus, it was quickly getting on track. Jing Yunzhao would only get busier in the future. Therefore, it didn't take long for the two families to start the engagement. Although Li Xiaoran didn't have a good relationship with his parents, they were still related by blood. Therefore, when the two families officially met, he still had to come forward. The location was set at Yu Tianxian's private room. Li Xiaoyan and old Master Li arrived very early, and the Su family and Li Peixian's couple appeared around the same time. When he saw Li Peixian's wife, Wang Rishan, Jing Yunzhao was stunned for a moment. She seemed to be a little injured, and there was a woman standing next to her. The woman was dressed elegantly and was supporting her all the way. She had a smile on her face and was very respectful. I heard from Zhao that Mr. Li and Mrs. Li were noble. Now that I see it, it's true. Uncle Li is really lucky. Su Yuantek stretched out his hand and said politely. Li Peixian was not a tough nut to crack. He had always been one to smile at every joke. Therefore, he said, "You're welcome. Mayor Su's reputation is like thunder to the ears. Your talent is not something a rough person like me can compare to." Su Yuantek's expression froze for a moment, but he didn't nitpick. Although Li Peixian had nothing to do with him, he still worked for the government. It was just that Li Peixian was doing an idle job and was very gentle, so it was not appropriate for him to call himself a rough man. He probably wanted people to remember that his father was Li Junwei. After that, Jing Yunzhao also politely called out uncle and auntie before obediently standing beside her father and uncle. By the way, this is Zhao's biological father. Su Yuantek introduced him even though he was still a little uncomfortable with Jing Tianyi. This was because Li Peixian and the others had been heading straight for the Su family as if they hadn't seen Jing Tianyi at all. After all, Jing Tianyi had changed his surname, so there was no need for him to hold on to the past. Now that Su Yuantek mentioned it, Li Peixian remembered that Jing Yunzhao had a father. In his heart, he had always forgotten about this matter. He even faintly felt that Jing Yunzhao was an orphan. After all, this father of hers was really too low-key. The Li family in the past was also not simple, but he had never heard anything about this man, which was why it was easy for people to overlook him. "This is Mr. Jing, right? Nice to meet you." Li Peixian greeted him, sensibly, in front of Li Junwei. Jing Tianyi's health had improved a lot. Although he was sitting in a wheelchair, his temperament was a little different. His face was especially pale, but he gave people a very gentle feeling which made people respect him more. Chapter 1359. Jing Tianyi usually didn't go out at all. If it wasn't for the fact that Jing Yunzhao's lifelong happiness was at stake, he would definitely refuse this banquet. "Mr. Li is too polite. I'll have to ask you to take care of me in the future." Jing Tianyi smiled and nodded as he responded. Beside him, Wang Rishan, Li Ying, and Li Rui couldn't help but take another look at Jing Tianyi. The two of them were about the same age as Jing Tianyi and had heard of each other's names before. Back then, Jing Tianyi's surname was Li, and he was the dream lover of many women. He was even said to be the #1 young master in the capital, mainly because of his bearing and literary talent. However, at this moment, the three women were secretly disappointed. What did Jing Tianyi look like back then? His face was like jade, his eyebrows were like swords, and his eyes were like stars. Although his appearance hadn't changed much from back then, he was still old after all. His face was somewhat tired, and his eyes were listless. More importantly, he was actually a cripple. "Yunzhao, aren't you a famous doctor? You even cured Elder Qi's old illness. How could—" Li Rui looked at Jing Tianyi's legs and asked with seemingly concern. When Old Man Li heard this, he looked at Li Rui unhappily. Li Rui wasn't very afraid of Old Man Li and only restrained her expression a little. "I was the one who requested not to be treated. After so many years of sitting in a wheelchair, I'm already used to it," Jing Tianyi said. His voice was naturally gentle and magnetic, and now it was slightly hoarse, making people feel a little dazed. "Is that so? But being a normal person should be better than being a cripple, right? Mr. Jing's habits are strange." Li Rui continued to smile. When she said this, Wang Rishan was a little surprised. It wasn't a bad thing that her sister-in-law could cause trouble. If she could make Jing Tianyi not agree to the marriage out of anger, that would be the best result. Her son was a proud son of heaven. What kind of girl couldn't he be matched with? Why did he have to be half a son-in-law of the Jing family? Although Jing Tianyi didn't usually go out, he was never stupid. In fact, he was an extremely smart person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to learn medical skills under the pressure of Li Wenba. His only shortcoming was that he lacked some boldness, not that he was brainless. At this moment, even a fool could sense that Li Rue was up to no good. Thus, she immediately chuckled and said, "Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door. Don't worry about the frost on the roof of other people's roof. Speak too much and you will lose." Madame Emo, speaking too much is not necessarily a good thing. Upon hearing this, Jing Yunzhao's eyes lit up. Although her father spoke in a roundabout manner, and there were too many words that made people dizzy, after listening carefully, she knew that his ability to scold people was not ordinary. Li Rue's husband's surname was Mo, but he had passed away a long time ago. She took care of the family business by herself and lived a comfortable life. There were no girls in Li Xiaoyun's generation, so it was convenient for outsiders to distinguish them. Sometimes, most people would call her Mrs. Li or Second Miss Li. Her husband's surname had not been given to her for a long time. Now that her father said this, it was to remind her of her identity. The second point was to tell her not to meddle in other people's business. If she spoke too much and did too much, she would be unlucky. Her father was cooped up at home all year round, reading and writing every day. He was proficient in all kinds of ancient languages. Even if he participated in the ancient imperial examinations, he would probably come back with a title. It was not wrong to say that he was a sour scholar. If she argued with him, she might be able to write an article in classical Chinese and criticize Li Rue without a single curse word. Chapter 1360. Jing Tianyi's words made Li Rue react for a while. Then, she glared at him unhappily. It was obvious that she was very angry. The group of people was still outside the restaurant. It was not appropriate to stay any longer, so they hurriedly went in together. Li Junwei and Su Jingji, the two old men, had bad tempers, but they were very polite and respectful to each other. They chatted happily. The two old men laughed heartily, but Wang Rushan and the others behind them secretly gritted their teeth. After sitting down, Wang Rushan stared at Li Xiaoyun and said, "Xiaoyun, I was almost hit by a car 2 days ago." What she meant was, "Son, come and take care of me." Jing Yunzhao was not an unreasonable person, but he did not like to be treated with a warm face. Therefore, after looking at her leg, he did not take the initiative to make trouble. "I don't know if it's a bad year recently. Our two families are discussing the engagement for the two children. I wanted to buy some jewelry or something to give to Yunzhao as a meeting gift, but who knew that I would be so unlucky? As soon as I walked out of the door, a car rushed over and the jade was broken. Fortunately, Missy happened to pass by and saved my life. Although I sprained my ankle, fortunately, I'm fine." Before Li Xiaoyun could speak, Wang Rushan continued. Jing Yunzhao pursed his lips. The room was silent and awkward. The Su family was a group of people who were protective of their children. Jing Yunzhao, the father, was a little more rational, but he was also unhappy. After all, today was the day of the two families meeting. Neither Jing Yunzhao nor Li Xiaoyun wanted the engagement party to be too big, so now that the two sides met, it was basically the same as the engagement party, which was a happy event. However, Wang Rushan's words made it sound like Jing Yunzhao had almost killed her. It was difficult to be happy. The Su family pursed their lips and did not speak. It was obvious that they were dissatisfied with the Li family. What did old Master Li do in his previous life to have such a son, daughter, and daughter-in-law? The eldest daughter-in-law comes from a poor family and has no education, so she doesn't know how to speak. "In-law, please don't mind her." At this time, Li Junwei said without hesitation. This simple sentence made Wang Rushan's eyes turn red instantly. Li Junwei had never cared about his family background. Many people knew this. When Li Peixian got married, Li Junwei didn't know much about his daughter-in-law. Many people said in front of him that the two families were not well matched. At that time, Old Masterly laughed a lot and gave Wang Rushan a lot of face. However, at this time, in front of so many people, he actually took back those words and even added that he had no manners. It was quite ruthless. Don't say that, Uncle Lee. This is not the era of the past where a girl would have to work like a cow or horse after marriage. Our Xiao is marrying Xiaoyun. Everything else is not important. Xiaoyun is just like you. I am very satisfied with his temperament and character. I also believe that he will continue to treat Zhao well. That is enough for me, said Su Yuantek with a smile. Jing Yunzhao only felt that the flames of war were spreading really quickly. Old Masterly was ruthless, and so was his uncle. Li Xiaoyan was leisurely picking food for her. He did not take the risk of being unfilial and provoking Wang Rushan, but he also did not speak up for Wang Rushan. At this time, Wang Rushan's expression was no longer ugly. Rather, it was bitter. She felt so wronged that tears were about to fall. She looked at her son with hidden bitterness. Jing Yunzhao felt that she must be regretting it greatly. If she had not used her son to make money, Li Xiaoyan would definitely be concerned about her reputation. However, it was too late for regrets. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.